Hello, good evening, well, afternoon. It's afternoon for us. It's
It's good evening for me, though. I'm recording from a different time zone.
Oh, fair enough.
I can't handle good afternoon, folks.
He's on Planet Dave.
Yes, it's 12 o'clock at night. No, sorry. It's Do You Expect to Talk commentary time, so that's why it's me introducing. This wasn't planned initially this week, but we decided to kind of return back to Bond because, well, it's been a while, just in general.
It was your idea.
It was, and I'm kind of happy with because it was your choice, wasn't it, Becca? You did.
It was.
We decided to do Quantum of Solace, which is this the last Craig one, isn't it? Until we get No Time to Die, and then we can probably.
Yeah, I was
do
about
that.
to say it's the last Legacy, Craig, but then of course we've been going so long that Spectre wasn't.
Spectre will be Legacy.
That wasn't a Legacy film when we first did it. That was
It will
new.
be now.
And it's now about, 16, 17 years old?
Feels like it.
Yeah.
Don't say that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's almost as old as, Doctor No at this point.
Ray Fiennes was in shorts in his school uniform in that one. Yeah.
Yes.
Instead of just William, it'll be just Bond.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Oh, yes. So
it's the last Craig one, which is...
It's the last Craig one, which is Quantum of Solace, until we get No Time to Die, which we'll do that at some point, I'm sure.
It's not the last Craig film, but it's the last Craig film that we'll have covered a commentary for.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, it's not even the last chronological as exists now.
No.
For anyone who's fairly new to this show, we take in turns to pick our commentaries, and we'd previously picked all the Craig ones except this. So it's the last one we haven't covered from him.
No, we sort of pick them at random, don't we? And I think we've only got 5 or 6 left to go. We haven't got very many to do now.
Not including No Time to Die, not including Casino Royale or any of the non-official ones that we may decide, hey, let's have a look at that one. But from the officially on Bond films, we got 6 left. We've got a couple of Connerys. No, I think we got 3 Connery, 2 more, and a Brosnan left.
And the Bros.
Yeah.
Good old Bros.
Yeah.
Oh, good old bro. I actually was looking for it. It was not enough we got left for.
No, it's Tomorrow Never Dies. I love the fact that, when we mention Bros now, it's always with that sort of good job, little buddy air. He's not that highly rated as Bond anymore. So when we mention Brosnan, it's like, oh, good old Bros.
Good old Bros.
he had a go, didn't he?
I think, obviously he kind of brought it into what would be like the modern era. And I think had we not kind of, you've got to go. I don't quite know how to phrase this, but it's kind of like we had to have Die Another Day so that we could have Casino Royale, if that makes sense.
So you mean he bravely made a shit Bond film for all of our sins?
Well, no, you've got to have films like Octopussy and, well, not Octopussy, but like Moonraker, for example, so you could have films like For Your Eyes Only. You've got to go kind of more and more outlandish until you think, right, okay, we've got to really pare it back, go back to Fleming, and look at the basics.
It is the only thing that ever centres them. They seem to have to do a batshit one before they suddenly go, what the hell are we doing?
Exactly.
Yeah, so absolutely. I've got no issue with people really liking Brosnan. It's to each their own. His era's just not aging that well, but Tomorrow Never Dies isn't a particularly bad film when we get to it. It's entertaining enough, so yeah. But we've got I think 2 decent Connerys and a crap Connery left, and 2 Roger Moores, and that's one good, one bad as well. In my view, obviously.
Yes.
Because I know some people like Octopussy. I would disagree.
I don't know. I'll be interested to do Octopussy with.
I always
Really?
watch everything
Because we might see your your path into insanity in real time.
Yeah, you're just
Dave suddenly goes mad.
Well, I'm quite looking forward to this. Strangely enough, and 2 hours later,
I'm feeling alright.
Yeah.
He's in a hot hair balloon for Q, for fuck's sake.
We never ridicule each other's opinions, but I saw Becca respond to something about Stephen Burkoff last night and saying how great he was in the film, and I'm like,
Well, no, what it was,
we are
it was
watching
a fabulously
different fucking
OTT
films.
performance.
We are watching different films because he is symptomatic of what's
Only
wrong.
because I watched it recently, and I thought, well, this is ridiculous. But it just occurred to me that I thought he was
Right.
not the best thing in it, but he gives a really fabulous OTT performance, and that's But I might watch it again later on and be like, no, this is
How
crap.
much content did you pour down him before he started. It's just like, calm down.
He did deserve the
But
Oscar.
it was the role that got him the villain in Beverly Hills Cop. So
Which is
Well, there we are. How
fantastic.
about that? Thank you.
But it's completely the opposite. It's all like kind of icy and menacing.
I think it's something to do with like his eyes as well. It's like he's got really
He
sort of
just
like
looks
blue
crazy.
eyes.
He's got great eyes.
Yeah.
Really piercing, definitely. That's why he is, he commands that reputation that he has, whether he's on stage or screen. And,
Well, the thing is,
it's got the one approach, really.
I prefer my Bond films really badly edited, so I've got no fucking idea what's going on.
Well, you're in luck.
And I like extras that are like crap as well.
I was going to say I'll be looking out for some like quality sweeping from.
Quality sweeping. We will mention it when we get there. Quantum of Solace.
Oh,
Before
my
we
gosh.
start, then, just a reminder of where we are with it. I think Chris likes it most of the three of us. Becca likes it least, and I'm somewhere in the middle. I think there's a good film in here, but I just think writer's strike, rushed, incompetently edited, the most Bourne influenced of any of the Bond films of the Craig era. They always say, oh, he's the Bourne Bond. I don't agree with that, generally speaking, but certainly if you're going to make the case, you'd make it with this one. But I think Becca struggles with it, and Chris is actually quite a defender of it. Would that be about fair?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm aware of its failings to a degree, but I think in the broad. Sorry, I was going to say in the broad spectre of things.
In the broad spectrum of things.
Yeah.
No.
In the quantum of a whole, I would. Yeah.
Sinkhole.
Yeah, I think I kind of.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you? Because the alternative.
I enjoy it I enjoy my time with it, and I think in as the grand scheme of things, they were heading in the right direction, which I think like the films like Spectre and Skyfall deviate from that, and I think it's jarred Craig's run to a degree, and I know people probably prefer Skyfall particularly, possibly Spectre as well. But I think
I certainly think Skyfall is a more accomplished film, but I'm sort of with you. I preferred. I liked Craig's Bond more in the first half of his run than the second half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get in a way that you kind of forgive. You can kind of like, okay, fine. I mean, by the end of the Quantum of Solace at the time, you thought, okay, well, that wasn't as good as Casino, but I've still liked where they're going.
Yeah. I mean, certainly after a few viewings, because I had a terrible time with it first off. We've talked about that before, but it's not aging too badly. I don't mind it on the smaller screen. I just don't see it as this crime against cinema that everyone else does. It's got some problems because of the strike. It definitely has severe editing problems. I mean, there's no doubt. I don't know what they were thinking, but if you just take if you take all that out and just look at like the story, it's fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
I think if they're going to remake a film, it would be interesting. Say they had the right budget, no writer strike, no constraints, and none of the production problems that they had. They could probably go back to this one and try to kind of do it again, and then perhaps just a suggestion.
Well,
they could wave a magic wand.
It kind of should be this era's License to Kill, but it's not in the same postcode as License to Kill in quality. But yeah,
that's not what JBR listened to Paul Jameson.
It's not the crime against cinema it's painted as. I don't dislike it particularly, but that's not to say
it's definitely a grower. Because I remember seeing it at the cinema and coming out thinking, and then it kind of took me a couple of goes, and it's definitely kind of grown.
Yeah, it does. You just mentioned JBR listeners. I hope it's appropriate to say this, but I think he's a listener. I wouldn't swear to it, but Nick is in hospital at the moment. I don't know if we want to use his full name, but Nick, if you are listening to this or come to listen to this, a JBR guy, Becca and I have both met him. I think he listens to us. He's certainly friends with us on Facebook. Little bit older than us, but not wildly so. He had some pre-existing conditions, and he was taken to hospital with double pneumonia last week.
Sending you lots of love and best wishes for a swift recovery.
Suspected coronavirus. We'll find out what the truth of that was in a few days. He is in the at-risk category, and he's a little bit touch and go at the moment, so we just want to send our best regards. If you get to the point that you're well enough to hear this, Nick, we're delighted you got through it.
Lots of love to you.
Yeah.
Oh, best of luck, Nick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yep.
So, with that, shall we watch a very average noughties Bond film?
Yeah.
Naughties.
But still not the. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the three they've released in this decade.
I know. God, imagine.
We're quite
having
lucky
a
to get
decade-
3 in a decade.
Imagine having a decade less than that.
Thing of the past now.
Particularly as you completely rebooted in the middle of the decade and stuff, and rushed anyway. Yeah, it's not the worst film of its decade, though. This is not as bad as Die Another Day. It just isn't. Anyway, Chris, take it away.
Okay, so on 3, I will press play. So, I'll be ready.
Yep,
Yeah,
I'm on play.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, and play. And away we go. We can see the lion roaring. Leo.
He's just starting to roar now. Yeah.
Yeah, very excited.
We're both on online versions, me and Chris. So you may be a split second behind just because of the mechanisms of Blu-rays, but I'm sure you can figure it out. We're just seeing the Columbia. We're just seeing the Columbia logo now.
Yep.
And the word Columbia appears now. So that's to give you some idea.
I like the credits. So like if you've got the DVD or Blu-ray version, the credits are completely different. Especially if you've got, I don't know about the most recent anniversary.
Do you mean the
release.
menu page?
The menu page. Sorry. Obviously it's in the style of what we come see later on in the film, but in the box set version it doesn't match any others. It stands out on its own.
Although I have to admit, I find the Bond menus from the Bond 50 box set cheesy as fuck.
Yeah, they are very cheesy.
I've never liked them.
Guy?
I don't like
Who's that
this
Buffon man?
mission
Who's he meant to be?
I don't know.
He's not Bond, who is he?
I've always
is
imagined
like
it's like the chef James Martin or something, because he did date Barbara Broccoli for a while. It's a slightly overweight bloke with bouffant hair, and I mean slightly overweight, not a lot. I just find it
see himself
cheesy.
as a bit of a Bond figure.
I don't know, this whole interacting with the fan base like we are actually spies ourselves, I find a bit juvenile. But to each their own. Having said that, although I wouldn't have done it myself, JBR referring to all their members as agents and stuff is just a bit of fun. I'm okay. But generally, the fan base interact with us like we all want to be James Bond, and it's like, oh, fucking grow up. I'm in my 40s. Those James Bond.
There's a bit of a laugh, though, isn't it? So
yeah, it's fine. It's not a big deal. But the Quantum of Solace disc was the first sign with this run of Bond that it wasn't going to be great, because the Casino Royale discs. The first release was okay, but then they did a luxury release a few months later.
You got playing cards with that
on DVD. Was like 3 discs, and it was a lovely box set. It had, and all of those extras have been ported over to the main box set for the films. So you've got stuff about Fleming in the Bahamas and stuff like that, and decent commentaries. The Quantum of Solace release is really bare bones. It's shite.
Yeah, it kind of goes. That's the state of them now, really, isn't it? I mean, you can go back and like with the original run of DVDs with the special and deluxe editions, bucket loads of extras. No, not so much.
Especially when because you hear there's loads of there are deleted footage in a film, and you think, I wonder what that footage is, and you think, interested to know.
Particularly the supposed last scene of this film. Yeah. There's one shot in this, I quite like this sequence, now I know it very well. First off, I struggled with it a little bit, but I like the music on this sequence and the cut to it. I'd rather have the gun barrel at every cost, but if you're going to leave it out, the transition here was nice. Yeah. But the very last shot before he goes to Sienna, which is Bond shooting in a moment, is just quintessential Craig. Just the way he moves, I love.
Oh yeah, definitely. He's got a real economy of movement.
I mean, he's just sat in a car seat, but there's just something about him, his eyes, the way he frames his features that's just perfect.
You can tell he's focused.
Yeah, just kind of like the rigidness of his driving as well. It's like,
and a really amazing suit as well.
Yeah,
you just think what?
Roger would be like Jackie Chan in the second Cannonball Run or something. He'd be sat watching like The Green Door on his video. Just hang on, I've got to watch some porn while we're doing this.
It'll be a bit like a Harry Enfield sketch, isn't it? Where he sort of just see this back reflection. It's like, I know, I lost him.
One of our teams at work who loosely work with us have an Italian working for them, and I was chatting to him the other day, it was weeks ago, but he was talking about Bond, and he turned out to be a fan, and we were talking about Italy and northern Italy and different things. The geography of this does not make sense. Siena is about a 5-hour drive from where he picked up.
It's movie magic, isn't it? Really,
this makes it look like Siena's round the corner. Because I asked him, I said, "How far away is Siena?" And he told me, and I said, "That's about a 4 or 5 hour drive." And he said, "Yeah, about 5 hours." The number of people who went, I love that line, it's time to get out, and it's like, really? Why? It's all right. I was so disappointed.
That's the magic of movie making, though, isn't it? You can make something that's actually like 5-6 hours
Yeah.
in an instant. So
Yeah. I mean, they've used it for the visual, and Sienna's a lovely looking town. I was really disappointed by this title sequence. I don't know about you guys.
I think it's because it's not Daniel Kleinman.
It just seemed like they had no ideas.
Like, who are these people? I mean, they are, an amazing creative force, but I think for the majority of fans, it's because it's not Daniel Kleinman. So people are like, wow, what the fuck is it?
Even the font's wrong, isn't it? I mean, I know if you watch a Bond film now and then watch one during the Roger era, the font is different, but they seem to change over time by era. This was suddenly quite jarring.
I think because it is so different to not what we're used to.
Plus, him walking around like that with his gun already up, it makes him look lost. It does look like Craig's
lost in the desert. Is he lost?
Fucking place here.
Well, actually, when you think about it, it does kind of fit in because he is essentially lost in the desert, having to navigate his way, literally trying to find that Quantum of Solace. After having lost Vesper.
Still better than Maurice Binder, though.
I think you might have got it right there.
With Maurice Binder, he did the gun barrel, so he's got.
Well, you've got that. You've got that tribute to Maurice Binder there as well.
Yeah. He's in Bond history, justifiably so, but I don't think his sequences have aged at all well. But a lot of that is Daniel Kleinman just raised the bar. It's as simple as that. Some of that is he has tools at his disposal that Binder didn't have. But how many sequences have we talked about now on commentaries where we go, what is there a theme to this? Is there a point? He's just got women sort of spinning round against the black. Hello, Mr. Terry Bamber.
Terry Bamber.
Against the black background, not against the black man. I realised I stopped in a very strange place there.
I like the kind of rotoscoping effect as well. I think that's very clever.
See, what would he do? What would Kleinman do with the this one? Do you think he'd probably have like elements of hot desert and water and things like that?
I don't know. The only thing I would say in defence of MK12 is, with the way the script was, I don't think they probably knew much more than it's going to happen.
Obviously you've got like the sort of tropes that you find of obviously Bond appearing in the titles, beautiful ladies swanning around with next to nothing on. You've got the motif of the globe as well, obviously trying to get to control like the global water supply. Desert and kind of obviously lack of water is a big theme as well. But I think they were just probably going on like the bare bones of the fact. I'm literally just trying to pick together the threads.
I don't think they had very much to go on. Would Daniel Kleinman have done a better job? Almost certainly, because he would have tried to. He's just good at what he does.
I think to be fair, we were spoiled with Casino. I mean, obviously the credits all the way through Brosnan era were good fun, but Casino Royale was probably, just my personal opinion, it's probably the best credit sequence we've had in a long, long time, and certainly the prettiest. And I think that kind of set the bar fantastically high. And any Kleinman could probably top that.
I don't understand Eon, because sometimes they seem totally in control and overrule their directors with stuff, and then other times they just indulge everything. Mendes clearly got indulged to do whatever he wanted, and I just think Mark Forster comes to me as Eon Productions and says, I want to replace Daniel Kleinman with this team. I would immediately say politely, fuck off. I'm sorry, we have the best in the business, and he's totally on brand. And did you happen to see what he did last time out?
I will say I do like that that closing shot where he fires a gun and he just follows the bullet.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's aged fairly well. I think it's not as bad as we're making it sound. It's aged fairly well, but when it started, it looked awful. When I first saw it, it was like, you followed Casino Royale with this. But there you go.
Look how young Craig looks.
Yeah.
I always
love
how
20 years older now.
I always love how he just casually just sort of takes a photo and put it in his pocket.
Yeah.
I had one of those phones.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is one of the better scenes in the film. Actually, it starts to go a bit south very soon. The idea of turning up into like a safe house, completely off the grid and stuff, with her not sure if she can trust him, and the head of this global body we think that we've never seen before, Do you know what I mean? And they don't know who they are. This is all wonderful setup, and in a beautiful city as well. The fact that they fluff what's coming to a degree is actually such a shame.
No, it's a bit difficult, isn't it? Because obviously you had the sort of the legal battle going on in the background as well. So there's an element of kind of trying to stop that gap before you can get to what would eventually become Spectre.
Yeah, but I mean, there are ways to transition from one to the other. This really isn't a comment on Spectre at the moment.
Oh, God, no.
We think White is probably the head of this body. The fact that we don't know for certain doesn't really matter because
but it's interesting to build
the
up
main
his character.
characters don't know. Yeah, but this is about to go really badly south in an editing perspective.
Florists use that expression.
Do they?
No, I think Jesper Christensen even is fantastic in the role. And he's definitely kind of one of the iconic characters for sure.
Yeah, and we ended up seeing relatively little of him, as a result of them moving away from this whole quantum thing.
But it makes quite an impact.
Yeah, I agree.
We got to go to his house as well. That well, not actually go to his house, but you can see outside.
What are you doing visiting me? I'm an actor, for fuck's sake. What makes you
I guess we're just going to pop up for tea.
You mean you went to Lake Como?
Yes, we did. We did a little sail past. It was good fun. I think it's lots of different flats, and maybe some might be like holiday lets.
Yeah, look.
It's a beautiful building.
That totally looked like Judi Dench was shot. I mean, that's
it really did.
Crap. We don't know if White's dead. It's a mess.
Yeah, it's all going on, and you've got the chaos of the horse run outside. Now you're going to have
two guys chase each other. Well, not chase each other. One chases the other, but they look so similar at the speed this is edited at that you can't really tell who's who after fucking. No. I like the idea. I mean, this is really doubling down on a much, much more physical Bond, and that's not a bad thing.
But you really feel like the viscerality, I don't know, the kind of the toughness of the chase, about how difficult it is for him to kind of track down his prey.
I mean, I do like the momentum of it. Like, we start off with like quite a fast chase scene, and then we've got to have a bit of plot setup, and now we're straight into like a quite surprise and
fast-paced action scene.
Yeah,
so it's moving forward really well.
There was a point in this where I sort of gave up because they get out into the crowd in a minute, and Haphazard Stuff covered this, that they get into the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll see a shot where when you break it down by shot, it doesn't make any sense. Someone appears to get shot and they're not in the next
and they're not,
shot, and then they're not there, and it's an absolute mess. And somewhere around here, it was jerking around. I couldn't tell where anyone fucking was, and I stopped caring.
It's off-putting, isn't it? It is off-putting.
It's really off-putting. It's not so bad on the small screen now. I've just watched it replay. It's not actually bad. But on the big screen, opening night, you've never seen this before. This just fucking lost me completely. In the Roger Moore era, you'd have had her say "Mamma Mia," really.
Yeah. Mamma Mia.
Yeah.
Doing that thing with the hands while looking up in the air. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally. Also, I just had a random thought occur. I mean, certainly in the Craig era as well, you kind of really feel the physicality of it, and him as Bond.
Back into the wall, yeah.
Exactly. So the first, the sort of, especially in his run of films as well, you kind of, rarely in the Bond movies do you see blood, for example, or do you see Bond get dirty, or kind of, but here, like, he's got nosebleed, suit's trashed, he's.
I like
quite a difficult time.
But this is very Bourne, because when I think of the Bourne series, I do think of him leaping across rooftops and things like that.
Exactly, like he does now.
And I just think it just annoys me about Eon. Not everything they do is bad. I'm not knocking them overall, but this whole following trends thing. You are the James Bond series. You are now trying to copy a series that takes fucking less money than you do anyway.
They should be leading.
Yes, I'm aware you lost the zeitgeist with sort of Die Another Day. I'm aware of that, but you don't literally have to get the same second unit team.
But the thing is, though, they lost the zeitgeist by doing exactly that. Let's be all trendy. Let's go slow motion, and let's be like the Matrix.
A big thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if the title sequence would be maybe really good if it was placed after the sequence. Did we have the title sequence too soon?
Well, I mentioned Haphazard Stuff. He made that argument. He reckoned he thought this should be a version of the gun barrel shot.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool.
To depends how he shoots him. I don't want to see Bond in the middle of a gun barrel where it's
we've seen that already, haven't we?
Don't want to see that. It needed to be a gun. I don't know. I
just think it'd be quite good. I mean, it was a good sequence, but I kind of think it would be quite, if they had really long pre-titles, this would be a good place to put it.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd always in the Craig run put the gun barrel narratively into the action like you did in Casino Royale, by now we'd have had 4 films of it with a 5th to come, and it would be kind of established. Now when I look back on it and it isn't the establishment, the idea bothers me. I'm like, no, I don't want it built into the film like that. It's
just a suggestion.
But the suggestion of the title sequence being here, if that's what you're saying, possibly, yeah. Because it wouldn't have been an absurdly long. Well, no, actually,
that'd be quite cool, and then have the title, title sequence.
Yeah, because you can take 3 minutes off the current running time. We're coming up to 15 minutes, but we've already had 3 or 4 minutes of music, so it would be a reasonably standard length Bond film, Bond pre-title, maybe slightly longer than the average, but not wildly.
I think I skipped ahead a few seconds just because I was lagging behind.
He's just walking back in there. There's blood stain on the floor and M and White.
Okay, yeah. And the similar sort of.
Yeah. At this point, I still think Judi Dench has been shot fucking dead.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So back to London.
Yeah, but about these titles as well, I'm not. It does confuse me how they keep changing a little bit. It's quite interesting how you've got the colour and excitement of Sienna, and you've got boring grey.
Yeah, do you need to tell us we're in London?
This is it. And then obviously I made this point back in our review, but when it says Sienna, Italy, it's like you would find that typeface on a wine list in a really posh restaurant. Would you like to see the wine list?
I just think it's forced to try to be a bit too arty-farty.
Well, they're stuck with it. Haven't they? Sort of all have to do a, acknowledging of where we're going for each thing, and they thought the idea of having it sort of blend in, or be yeah. But I like this as an idea that there's a mole in MI6, but we're not necessarily looking for one person. We're looking at is the whole thing compromised? Hang on a minute. He worked with me for 8 years. Lie detector tests every.
Yeah.
She was probably at his wedding. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Christenings, family events.
So it is a great setup. We go fucking hell. How deep does this go?
Yeah. I've always thought Craig's hair in this film looks a little bit like a wig. It isn't. It's just something in the length they get it too short. It's too short in the next one. If anything, I think it's too long here. Short. I don't know what it is. It's not bad, but it's just slightly off. His hair was better in the first one.
It's that kind of
and in the last two, if you include No Time to Die. His hair in sort of Casino Royale configuration, which is what it normally is about right. It
just looks a bit too plain, I think.
It does,
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's slightly too long, or I don't know.
Too much wax, too much gel.
Don't know.
I think this scene's quite cool.
Too much on the sides. If it was trimmed a bit at the sides, I think.
I don't know. It's something on the fringe I'm looking at that ain't right.
I think he wants to spike it up at the front, as was the style at the time.
Possibly.
This bit's quite cool when they examine the.
He's at his peak, and that suit is great. Compare that to the suits he wears afterwards.
too tight.
They dress him so well in this film.
I like some of the Tom Ford suits. So they're kind of a bit more fitted. I think it's just whatever's the trend and the style at the time and the tailoring.
Yeah, but his suits are a size too small at the moment.
He's got to breathe in.
And they stick him in grey suit after this. Whereas look at that just looks great. He looks really good in this.
It is a very colourful film.
The music as he arrives in Haiti is really nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can't hear it at the moment, but it's nice.
Yeah, it's kind of got this kind of I don't know what the instrument is, but it's playing the Bond theme, isn't it? With the kind of
I
can't. I don't know what the
flamenco
is.
style, yeah. But it's it's very. The score to this is not actually one of my favourite of Arnold's. Well, I like Casino Royale score more, but it's very, very location specific in places. You just go. You can almost feel where they are from the score.
Oh.
Nice blast of that, Becca. No.
Sorry.
All right.
It's kind of a shame they could have just as soon as he's gone to London, you have da 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 da.
It was Robert China.
Yeah, but there's no cliched music for Haiti, is there?
Ding 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 ding. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, if it was like, I don't know, 1960s Japan or something like that.
It is quite action heavy, though.
It's tricky. It is tricky because you're trying to capture
But I
the
like
flavour.
this as well. This is way better than the fist fights in the films that follow as well. And a lot of people who don't like this film had a problem with the fact that Bond's such a killer here, but he's not. I've always sort of seen Bond a bit like that anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean,
don't really have a
that's
problem.
who he is. He's very much like, gets him...
This is like one of like the dirtiest films. Like he really does get his hands dirty.
Yeah, and I like this. He's sort of caught him in the neck. I don't even know if he really sort of meant to do that, but now he's just got to wait for him to bleed out.
It's quite kind of brutal.
No,
the brutal aspects of his job.
Has he stabbed him in the leg as well?
Well, he was holding his neck, so I thought
Yeah.
it was his neck where he bled out. There's not a lot of blood there, but that's the PG-13 probably.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a hard 18 rating.
He's probably...
It's just...
Oh, you see a little bit, but
Yeah, it's just the point that, like, it's just part of the job. You cannot get emotionally involved in it. It's not that he seeks killing, although if he does have an arc in this film, it's that he's learning that, like, killing is quite often... That's the Michael G. Wilson character cameo in this film. He sat behind him.
yeah, there he is reading the paper.
I don't mind those sorts of cameos. We disagree on some of the other ones. No
Consider
problem.
him slimed.
Yeah, fuck off. Consider yourself shite at this. Keep your mouth shut and we'll let it go.
Well, I think as he gets older, his cameos aren't as much.
No, and in
It
fact,
just seems like the Brosnan era that he kind
the
of
way Spectre was edited, not Spectre, Skyfall was edited, we lost part of his cameo anyway. It's when Judi Dench is looking at the coffins, isn't it?
Yeah.
All draped in the flag. But the
Yeah,
way the
dropped out.
scene's edited, he's kind of in a doorway and you don't really get to see him.
No, unless you know he's there or somebody goes, oh, look, it's the producer.
The funniest one is The World Is Not Enough, where he's like a doorman stood next to a genuinely hard-looking younger bloke.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Once you notice it, it's hilarious. It's like, what made you think I'll play the tough bouncer on the door?
I do
No,
love...
I like Casino Royale. No, yeah, Casino Royale. I think that's quite a good one.
Yeah, that's all right.
That's probably my favourite.
As I say, conceptually, I don't like them appearing at all. But accepting that they do,
It's a Hitchcock
and
cameo.
some people like them. Yeah, but he's not Hitchcock. He's not the
No, I know,
director.
but still.
That's my point. But accepting some people do like them.
No, there's another director who likes to appear in their film.
Make them as unobtrusive as possible.
Like
So
in...
don't give him lines.
Like in License to Kill, he has a voice cameo.
He does. Hear him on the radio.
Oh right, yes.
So I do like this aspect of Bond, of him just basically just sort of like... just...
Making
Just-
up as he goes along.
Yeah, just kind of like just
Let's see
getting
where this
involved.
takes me.
Yeah.
Follow this lead, see where it goes.
And he kind of does do that in some of the books to a degree, in that he's somewhere and he's just waiting. He's just watching the world and waiting for like information to reveal itself. We know they're going to be a little bit more action heavy on big screen. The idea that he's some big, muscled, rough bruiser, he's toned, but there he is, like fully dressed. Look, he's
Yeah.
not bulky. He's not bulky at all. He's bulkier than Brosnan, but Brosnan was probably the slightest Bond.
But he's kind of like, he's getting involved in the action, but getting information, so he obviously knows, like, well, they don't know what I look like.
I don't have a problem with the characterization of Bond in this. Bear in mind, he's still very early era Bond as well, anyway.
What is that gadget that they have? It never really caught on.
What one? What are you on about?
The gadget that...
What he's got in his hand there?
Yeah,
I don't know.
sort of like a PDA sort of thing. It never really caught on.
I think it's probably a handheld Atari, and he's just pretending to talk to Bond.
Hello.
You're playing Space Invaders, aren't you? No, I'm chatting to our agents.
Playing Gallagher.
Hey, we're getting close to the.
Here's your main henchman, Elvis.
Yeah.
Good old
Again,
Elvis.
I have to think, whatever the flaws of the writers on this series, I think if they'd done several passes, they might have been able to look at it and go, "This isn't working," and like retool Elvis a bit.
Yeah.
You think we're missing like a proper decent henchman, like proper like?
Well, if you think about it, the main villain isn't. I mean, you know, he doesn't fight. He's not particularly well. Matthew Armerick is very creepy, but he's one of the most understated villains, I think, especially of the Craig era.
Yes.
And I think Elvis. So I'm struggling to remember names. Elvis, the henchman, kind of really goes with that. I mean, he's not.
He's kind of a joke, really. He just gets shat
he's
on every
a bit of
time.
a joke henchman. A bit of comedy, you know, light relief. He's not that effective. Should probably be at home with his mum.
I do think if you're gonna have a Matthew Almeric figure as the main villain, you do counterbalance it with somebody a bit more physical.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
they did that.
You
I
don't
mean,
like Elvis.
and we know it's not a favourite of mine, but they did that in Octopussy and stuff like that. When you tend to get a slightly creepier villain, you tend to counterbalance with a little bit of brute force. Maybe that would be cliched. They're trying to do something different, and I don't mind. Hinks
No,
was
I think it's
Hinks.
because Matthew Armour, he's like
Yeah.
he's not that kind of physical villain. He's more kind of
No.
psychological. He'll kind of get under your skin or try to.
Whereas Silver is like an ex-agent and can do the physical stuff, so you don't need to counterbalance him in the
No,
same.
exactly.
I
He's
do think-
heavily physical, and he's got the mental prowess to go with
I
it.
think Hinks has been the big wasted opportunity of the Craig era.
I kind of hope he's going to pop up in No Time to Die, but I don't think he will.
Well, I guess it's possible. I mean, given Blofeld's in it, but
We shall see.
yeah.
Anyway, during these Haiti scenes, let's look out for that guy who can't sweep.
Well, it's either now or we've just missed it. Because Bond is watching all this, isn't he?
From across the way, and there's a dude not sweeping.
Yeah. For anyone
That's
who's
really
never
bad.
seen this, we're going to get a shot of Craig looking sort of
Tapping his phone.
off the screen, sort of, sat on a bike, and there's a guy behind him who's a road sweeper. But he's obviously been told to mime road sweeping and has taken it rather literally.
He doesn't even put his brush to the floor. It's
He
silly.
doesn't make contact with the ground. He's air brushing. Not air brushing,
Literally.
air brushing.
Quite literally.
Yeah. And I don't get it. But then, like, I didn't spot it originally, so I can understand why they didn't spot it in the edit, actually, because your eyes are on Craig at that point. I can see what they're trying to do with Camille in this story. But first off, Kurylenko has aged really well in that I think she looks much better now than she did in this film.
Oh, okay.
But I don't find the Camille story that interesting. I think they're trying to do some sort of parallel with Bond, but this is meant to be just Bond's story. So when they start going on about what Medrano did to her family, I'm like, I can see what you're trying to do.
There he is.
But I don't care. We might be in a different place, Becca.
Oh yeah, I got him.
Yeah,
There it is. There it is.
Oh yeah, I'm a bit behind, a bit ahead. Sorry, I'll pause it for a bit.
Right, target confirmed. Tracking Elvis on the phone. You've reached.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm with you now.
Okay, that's it. Yeah. Glad you put a bit of fear on him there, Elvis.
Pay attention.
I always think like General Majano looks like he should be singing like he should be like Rene and Renata.
When's his album coming out?
Yeah, he should be like Save Your Love.
So I think I do like the villains. I mean, I do agree that there needs to be like a decent henchman who gives Bond a bit of a fight later on. But
yeah, because at the end he's having a fist fight
Yeah.
with this guy, and it's like, well, that's a bit one-sided with the most physical Bond we've had since Lazenby.
But I always like the sort of the villain's sort of plan and goals. I just think that's very much more of a modern take of the of like a Bond
Yeah, I
villain.
mean, it does have to move with the times. You can't just have, and then we're going to repopulate the Earth, and you know, there's probably room for some of those bigger plots, but yeah, I can see what they've been trying to do with the Craig era. It's been a qualified success so far. Bits of it aren't working, bits do. I didn't have a problem with it in theory, and certainly when he was announced after like Diving Bell and the Butterfly, I didn't think he was at all a bad choice. But then I watched the film and I got no real sense of threat off him at all. And then the film ends after a load of jarring action sequences that made no sense, with him having a fist fight with, as I say, the most physical Bond since Lazenby. And it's like, well, physically, if this was Roger Moore or Pierce Brosnan, it would still be one-sided because Bond is, you've got to accept he's good at fighting whoever's playing him, but it would visually look a little bit better. But you know, it's like putting him up against a Lazenby. It doesn't work. I think MI6 should start thinking already about sending out a fit bird in just a raincoat to like, get Bond back. Because I think that's what you do with a drunk, heartbroken womanizer.
Yeah, so not probably not the wisest thing. I
Play
don't know.
on his weakness. I mean, the only way it would have been worse is if she'd been carrying a case of vodka with her. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's probably method in the madness. It's like, well, if they just sent like a suit do you think Bond would like listen to him or probably just run rings around him? Whereas like they send like attractive girl, he might she might be able to like lure him out of the situation.
What, you mean she should just drop her pants and then back towards the airport and,
kind of,
and hope he follows? Come on, it's right here for you. Come on, keep going. Back onto a plane, and the next thing you know, is hang on, I'm in London. Yeah, and all of this was just edited very badly. This isn't so bad, but there's a bit coming up with the flipping of a boat. I've seen it broken down shot by shot, and you still can't quite figure out how it happens.
I wonder if it's kind of one of those scenes that's kind of put together and just specifically for the trailer. It seems to me like that kind of shot. Like it's one of the ones that in an alternate universe you might have seen in the trailer but didn't appear in the actual film.
So what is it that actually happened then with the editing? Then do you think? Because you wouldn't think, there wouldn't be like this.
I just think this is just, and it's almost embarrassing because it's 2008 by now. Somewhere around the early to mid 2000s, this shaky cam thing came in, and everyone thought it was like visceral and like made you feel part of the action. And when it was done well, it made some sense. Although I'd still argue the best Bourne film is the one that isn't all shaky cam. It's the Bourne Identity, the first one. But in Zeitgeist, the second and third ones took more of a hold on like public opinion and public imagination. By now, you've got Eon copying something that's starting to go out of fashion anyway. And on TV, it was much older than that. If you want like shaky cam and handheld, NYPD Blue popularized that in the early 90s. It's just an obnoxious era of. It's a bit like before that you had desaturation left, right, and centre. Things like Saving Private Ryan started it. Stuff like Black Hawk Down copied it, and you've got a studio behind the curve when they start doing it like 4 years after it was a thing. So yeah, I don't like that. There was a little bit of that in the Iceland part of Die Another Day, and I just wish they'd had more confidence in their product. They are the third or fourth, most popular franchise of all time in terms of public reach. It's probably arguably, all time. It's probably arguably only behind Star Wars, although maybe you could argue Marvel. Things like the Fast franchise now, but who knows how many years or decades that will or won't last. This is an iconic prestige product, and so to watch them constantly copying trends pisses me off.
It's something that's going to continue to be exported globally as well, so they kind of have to really be at the forefront of trends rather than get behind them.
But they've been doing it ever since like Live and Let Die, really, haven't they?
They started that trend.
It's annoying because like you think after Casino Royale, which got it right in terms of like tone then, and style.
The parkour thing was copying trends. The saving grace of it was really good. Yeah.
So you think they carried on with that sort of style,
I mean, it's a bit of a rush anyway. Bear in mind, they are sort of making it up as they go along on the set of this.
I think the thing with the shaky cam is I think a lot of like action films copied it because it was a lot easier, especially when it came to like actors who were not necessarily stuntmen. So it was a lot easier to kind of cut around the edges.
Shake it around. If we shake the camera around, you'll just
shake it around.
This makes sense, and they're good at it.
Fast cut edit, and then you can kind of a lot easier rather than like say do it like say John Wick had done it.
But it's
got your actors training for 3 months.
It is one apart from the every mission being personal thing. It is the biggest indicator of the era of film you're watching, and it's not dating very well at all. Some of it is. I mean, he still looks the part, doesn't he? And the suits he wears, they haven't particularly gone out of fashion yet in the 12
No, he
years.
still looks good.
Yeah. And again, he's still trying to figure it out as he goes along. I like I'm not so much a fan of him going rogue because it's been done to death, but the idea of you don't have the full picture, so just keep going and see what occurs.
He's following that lead, isn't he? So
yeah. Well, yeah, but it's a good way of doing like following a plot. So it's almost like a semi-detective story, while at the same time maintaining action scenes where he's just sort of like, you go in, you get into scrapes, you find out something.
And you don't have to compromise. Then you don't have to go. Well, it's not like the book where he's a detective, or like fucking action films where it's all fighting. You can do both. You can fit the needs of the film. I never was sure about this redesign of MI6. Were you guys?
It does
the MI6 building.
It does look. I mean, especially when you look at it like in comparison to the entire series, it does look a complete jar. Like, hang on, it looks completely different now. And then next time it's going to look completely different again.
It threw away that Judi Dench era M office, which was like an acceptable alternative to the Bernard Lee one that went out.
It was like a 90s office.
Yeah, if that had been like M's office from then on forever, it would be almost as iconic now, because it will have been there just that long.
I think I saw that. I saw that on. Might not have been Calvin. It might have been somebody else. But like every time, basically got like 3 or 4 incarnations of the office each time, and it's like you can see where the money's going.
Yeah, I mean, the office she used through the Brosnan era was always the same. Sometimes the desk was in a different position and stuff. And at the end of Casino, she is talking to him on the phone from that office. So she actually only was in 3 different offices, if you like. But I think the Skyfall one is meant to be in the same physical space as that, but redesigned again.
Yeah.
And I just wish they hadn't. There's something about him going in to see M. I just like it. I understand why they redesigned it for Brosnan era, because that was a refreshing of the series.
Oh no, yeah, it was Calvin. So did it bother anyone else how many office revamps the head of MI6 has had in the Daniel Craig Bond series? So it's like 3 or 4 different iterations.
Well, it is 4 actually, yes, because she was in the original Brosnan one in the first film.
So each of them.
The Skyfall one has the sort of the nice view of the Thames.
That's kind of almost like a temporary office as well.
I think that's meant to be the same space as that. No, the one she's in at the start of Skyfall.
Oh, at the start of the film, yes, of course.
The rest of it we can't really count because that's different. And then the 4th one is back to the Bernard Lee one, effectively.
Yeah.
More or less.
You can see where the money's going.
Not a double door, which annoys me. And again, I think they had ideas around the Gregory Harbour. What's he called, Gregory Harbour? So have I got the right actor's name?
David Harbour and Gregory Harbour. You're confusing.
That's what I'm going. That's what it didn't sound right.
That's another character.
David Harbour. They had ideas here.
They know Stranger Things.
But he gets a little bit.
And Hellboy.
Again, it's a bit wasted. There's something about they've infiltrated the CIA or they've misled the CIA.
I mean, Jeffrey Wright is wasted in this film.
He just sits there silently most of the time, doesn't he? Even later on, when he's at the party, he's just sitting there silently. Such a waste.
Yeah, David Harbour. He's a really good actor as well, but he's very slimy, and he's obviously in it. He's CIA, but he's in it for his own gain, so he's very slippery, and he's quite happy to sit down with Dominic Greene and be like, oh yeah, buddy's mates, and he's totally out for himself.
Well, he's just basically that sort of that CIA douchebag. He's just like
that's it. He keeps ending up
full of himself.
Like Killer Fur or something.
It's kind of it's the thing with I was going to say Lex Luthor though. No, it's not Lex Luthor at all. Lighter. It is basically sort of set up to get him in a more senior position for future films.
Yes, yeah. Which they didn't use. Yeah.
So he sat there kind of like selling the idea he doesn't want to be there at all because he's like...
There is a plot thread here that's a little bit underdeveloped, to say the least, like a lot of the film. And it's a bit of a shame because you look at David Harbour and he's one of these actors that can do a bit of everything. I mean, he's playing a bit smarmy and slightly overweight here, but he's played ripped in other things. He can play comedic. He can do most things. In fact, looking at him here, all right, I know there's a ton of makeup. You wouldn't immediately go, hang on a minute, that's Hellboy. You know what I mean? He does sort of disappear into roles a little bit. So it was a bit of a waste. And you sat here watching it on first viewing, wondering why Leiter's not saying anything and stuff like that. Bregenz Austria, that font is horrible. But there you go. It's too overthought.
Actually, not Austria, is it?
What, filmed? No.
No.
But it's meant to be Bregenz Austria. So I think this film was it's not only the writer's strike. I think had there been no writer's strike, I still think this film might have been slightly compromised because they just rushed it. They got Forster on board really, really late. because they were chasing Roger Michelle and things like that first. They were late with the script anyway before they had stopped, which seems to be a repeating theme of this era of Bond. And it was originally going to come out May 2008, which is like 18 months. Are you kidding? In this era, they would have still brought it out in November. And I just think, like, as much as I'd love these films every other year, there's something about the length of time they spend promoting the previous one and letting people go off and do some other things that if they tried to do it every other year now, I think they would look this rushed more often than not. I mean, the last one, I mean, before this, when you look at 2-year gaps, Tomorrow Never Dies started really, really late. You know, they were under the gun on that one, and The World Is Not Enough had some severely underdeveloped ideas in it. So maybe 2 years isn't realistic with the way Eon work. I still think it should be. If you can stick, 3 Captain America films out that quickly with, 2 of them, well, all of them with the same writers, then it should be possible. But for whatever reason, it isn't. And I do wonder if this film would have ever been particularly good.
Yeah, I mean, I always say it is possible to do 2 films. Sorry, a film every 2 years.
Yeah. Before you go on, I'm just going to stress that I mean, given the way they work now.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean there isn't a way to do it. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, no, because you can quite easily. I mean, it's like while principal filming is happening, you could be getting on and planning the next script, and then it's ready to go, and you get momentum with it. It's it doesn't have to sort of like, let's focus all our efforts on one film, and then sort of consider where we go next after it's all done. You can, juggle things about because you've got your mainstay writers anyway. You've got Purvis and Wade, and I don't know what they're doing.
If they're always going to play on the physicality of the character going forward, and it's going to be one of the selling, not stunts in the same way as Mission Impossible, but your leading man is really physical. Therefore, you never cast anything analogous to, say, Roger Moore again. Then you can understand that the Bond in question will likely want some kind of break thereafter. The idea that it's been getting on for 5 years is too much. I saw an interview with him when he didn't come off as whining. I don't get this. He hates the role. I know the slash the wrist comments, but I've seen enough from Craig over the years that I think he genuinely enjoys it. But I think with the injuries he had on the set of Spectre and the issues that were going on there, he definitely found it really tough and was debating whether he wanted to put his body through it again. There does come a point, though, where when he says 4 or 5 years, you have to say, well, okay for your last one, but that's not tenable. We can't have an actor say, well, I'll do one every 4 or 5 years. But I can understand that they won't necessarily want to go every other year. Because if a film comes out in October and November, by the time you factor in home release, they're still promoting it in like the May before they're due to go at the end of the year filming the next one. They're not going to want to do that anymore. But I think 3 years should be possible, surely.
Yeah, you kind of think out of the pinch, you should be able to do that.
2 years might be possible in certain cases, but I wouldn't bank on it being every time.
You wouldn't be able to go back to the original back to back. Not back to back, but
you could kind of go like in between. Like,
you need a studio system for that.
You could do 2. You can do 2 to 3, can't you? You can sort of like
easily.
Depending.
Yeah, you might get a bit ahead of the game on one, and that's 2 years. But then the next one, you're not quite. Yeah, a bit like the Brosnan era, actually.
Or if you've got someone who's like quite fit and physical, you can probably shoot back to back and then have a bit of a longer break and then come back a bit.
I don't know. I mean, we're not inside the machine for how it feels. That's why I try and balance the things I say about it.
Yeah, it's obviously it can't be done easily.
There's stuff we don't see, and conversations with studios we don't see. But we can say they're taking too long. If you want this to be a viable series forever outside of the UK, because the UK will always love it because we've got ownership of it effectively. In our culturally we feel like it's ours. And I do think Eon copy too much. They're a little bit like what's hot right now, and it's like, stop. You are the James Bond series. Make what you like and let everyone else fucking copy you. But good and bad. I think if I looked at about their last 8 films, they've done about 3 good ones, which is not a staggeringly good hit rate. But the good ones have been very good. in public consciousness. I mean, two of
Yeah.
those three supposed greats I'm not a wild fan of, but I know the public are, and that's fair enough. Watching one of them tonight.
So I do like this whole scene as well. It's great. Which almost makes it a shame that that it's compromised by, because
if the tech had existed in Fleming's time, he could have written this.
Mm.
Do you agree, Becca? If the technology existed to talk at distance and all the rest of it, this is very much the literary Bond could have done something like this.
Yeah, it's a convincing argument for sure.
And the whole thing with the music just looks great. I mean, it goes into a bit.
It was a bit arty at the end.
It wastes an action scene here because you could have had something.
Yeah, the literary Bond wouldn't be doing all that. He wouldn't be fighting his way through.
No, I think had we had the technology, I think.
But the actual bit where he's just observing, and then
you
eventually
can kind of see
calls them out to get who they are. I could see a book version of that.
Yeah, it's probably something that Fleming could have created, or certainly one of the continuation authors as well. I mean, I quite like, for me, this scene is probably one of my most favourite in the film.
I'd agree.
The kind of the scene where he's following all the agents with Tosca playing in the background.
I had some issues with the design of it though, Becca, because I've never been to see Tosca, so I don't know what it looks like on its standard staging. But there was something about that weird-looking eye. It was quite coldly shot.
It was, yeah. I think that's.
I didn't like the look of it. I like the idea.
I don't know about. I've never seen it myself, but I
nor
might
have
have made a comment about it in our review, talking about like the themes of it, for example. It was certainly sort of relevant for this sort of film as well. It's meant to be kind of like the eye of like the state or the church, kind of looking down on you, kind of like judging you. And he's basically kind of playing God here, almost kind of like sort of like picking people off and going, you guys should find a better place to meet.
There's so much I like about this film.
But I just think it looks brilliant. It's quite arty. But I quite like it.
I tell you, the character who gets an awful lot of like slating from the fans that I've never seen the problem with is Rory Kinnear's Tanner.
Oh, I think he's great.
You go on any Bond forum
fabulous.
and they knock the shit out of him.
Really?
And I don't mean...
He's brilliant.
Yeah, what I want to say is that's not the same complaint as there being too much of the MI6 crew. That's a different argument. The idea that there's too much of MQ, him...
Yeah, I'm aware of that argument.
That's a different argument. But of the four of them, if you count now Ray Fiennes, Ben Whishaw, he's the one that they don't like. They're like, he's
great.
Shit, and
I
you can
do like him a lot.
And I don't get it.
But whatever he's in, he's really great. I probably mentioned this last time as well. I saw a production of Hamlet many years ago at Guildford, I think.
Well, in person, live, you mean?
Yeah, on stage. I kind of think it was in. Oh no, it might not have been Guildford. Anyway, somewhere. No, there's a mistake. I tell a lie. But anyway, wherever it was. No, he's really good as Hamlet, and he's funny as well. And also, we know that from sort of Black Mirror and other sort of. Oh, what's the other one? There's another series that he's done.
I'm not sure. I mean, when you say it,
and he's got great comedic chops as well.
If you say it and it'll, I might remember it, but I can't off the top of my head. He was in the very first Black Mirror, which is the only one I've ever seen. He was in the books. He's he's Bond's only real friend, his closest friend,
Yeah, pretty much.
If you're gonna have the MI6 crew in it, I wish the literary series had played him not like Leiter, because Leiter's out in the field, but like if he was taking the odd call from Bill, not Tanner, Bill, his friend Bill, at MI6 to find out some stuff under the table, I'd be all right with that.
That's what when you start calling them by their first names. I think that's kind of when obviously you have sort of Felix and Bill, for example. Yeah. But then obviously we had Michael Kitchen in the Brosnan era as well. But no, I would agree.
They don't play up the connection between Bond and Tanner in the film series in quite the same way as the books, do they?
No.
In the books, they're close friends.
Yeah, exactly.
As close as Bond ever gets to anyone.
Yeah. Here we don't really get a sense of that, but we still, obviously the colleagues and they work a lot with each other, but they kind of don't get a sense of the friendship. Excuse me.
I just remember him in the boat. He's getting to the door now, but I looked at him and thought, Christ, they're really playing up the Steve McQueen resemblance, aren't they?
That's the look they were going for here.
That could be fucking Thomas Crown Affair or something.
Yeah, just something thought. He probably would have been a better choice for Steve McQueen in the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yes, he would. Although it might have been a bit distracting. It's like because it's James Bond. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can have him in other things, but just appearing as a cameo as a big star, it might be a bit distracting. But he's closer. I mean, of course, he's now older than McQueen was when he died, so it would be difficult to do any kind of retrospective with him.
Well, they put Damon Lewis in a wig, didn't they? It was kind of like a quite a big wig.
Yeah, but it was. I mean, he didn't particularly look like McQueen, but it was less distracting than had it been Daniel Craig. But certainly, there was talk years ago, during his time as Bond, probably around here, of saying if they ever do a McQueen biopic, he would be perfect, and he would have been. But McQueen died he was either 50 or about to turn 50, something like that. He was another one who sort of died of effectively asbestosis.
It's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, he worked with asbestos as a young guy, same as the principal in Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
You know, they basically, we saw 2 or 3 decades of them. They went too young, and it turned out their death warrant had been signed before they were even public figures, because they worked with it when they were very young. Asbestos is a horrible substance. It's where I'm from. That's a naval port town, and I went to school with a couple of people whose fathers died of it because they were just working in the dockyard with open bags of asbestos. And it's a single exposure thing. You can work with it for a period of time and be all right, but literally it only takes one of sort of exposure in the wrong way, and you're a time bomb. I always found Mathis's partner here a little bit reminded me of Della in License to Kill. You think, yeah, does she want a threesome or what? She seems to be very keen. She's very happy Bond is there, put it that way.
Yeah, it's always a bit odd, isn't it? You know, it's always just like, Bond, he just shags anyone, and and no one seems to mind, even his mates. Sunglasses really suit him. I remember my dad went to see this with me, my late father. He loved Casino Royale, went to see this, had a miserable time with it, and I must admit I did as well. But I was talking about the Steve McQueen resemblance and that scene, and he said I thought he looked a dickhead there, which is just the way my dad used to talk, honestly. Imagine me at my nastiest about any film we've ever discussed, and that's my dad 85% of the time. I liked him, but he was really quite blunt about things. But I think lenses really fucking suit Daniel Craig sunglasses. They really do. But this scene here is what is really emblematic of the problems with the film. That this is Bond heartbroken after Vesper, and there's only a couple of times the film really gives us any room to breathe to look at that in his internal state. He's not hammered because he's a drunk, although Bond is a borderline drunk. He's hammered because he's heartbroken. And the film just has one short scene here and another short scene when Mathis dies, and the rest of it is just ADHD. And I just think, what a waste of an opportunity. I remember when we did the review and I cut a trailer for it, I used that song that was also used in Notting Hill, How Do You Mend a Broken Heart? And it's just, that should be what this film is, and it's just not really. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Because it's rather than have something like sort of quite deep and meaningful, you've got, basically the ingredients for a
touch
cocktail.
On it briefly. Yeah, it's like, what did you make it with? I don't think you can get Kina Lillet anymore anyway. I don't think you can physically make that drink if you want to. Becca, you might know that. Do you? Have you seen the same stuff as me? You cannot get every ingredient that's in a Vespa now. I think Kina Lillet might be banned or just not made anymore.
No, you can still buy it. I think you might have to probably buy it online. You probably can't get the same ingredients, but you can probably get more modern versions.
Oh yeah, you can get something similar. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, but I have actually bought. I remember. Oh god, when was it? I think it's probably when Casino Royale came out. I went to wine shop and bought a bottle. I was like, "Excuse me, do you have this really old wine?" And actually, they did. So I managed to buy some.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the only time I went to buy it. But when say like a couple of our JBR friends who sort of regularly had cocktail parties, as they are classy folk, when they've had to need to buy it, they always buy it online.
Okay.
I don't know. I'll ask a friend of mine.
That's why I asked, because I thought I'd heard it, and given I've probably heard it on a podcast, And by the weight of numbers, I've heard more JBR than anything else. And
Yeah.
you listen to all the same stuff I do.
Because they're all drunk.
And you know the people better than I do, although I've met some of them. I thought, I bet Becca knows the answer to this, and you did. It turns out you can get it. I didn't know that. If it had just been me and Chris on this, I would have said with total confidence, you can't make that drink anymore.
Well, you can probably make it with slightly different ingredients. So
She's not wearing anything under that, is she?
No, she's not. That's the whole point of it.
Disgusting. Filth.
She's like the West rubbish agent. I just went to Tesco grocery and typed in. I won't tell you what came up.
All right. Well, we would laugh along, but you're not giving us the punchline to the joke, so we can't really, can we?
No, I think I spelled it wrong. I'm just going to say sanitary products.
Oh, you got Lilette's, come on.
I did. I did.
Don't put that in your drink, it'll expand. It'll soak up all the liquid. Best line in the film.
No, yeah, I spelled it.
Best line in the film, not even in English.
Yeah, that's such a great line.
Mm. He looks like he's being served there by not Mark Lamar.
He's a bit of Mark Lamar.
Remember him?
Yeah, what happened to him?
His career just absolutely disappeared.
I think he just lost interest, though, didn't he? He did Bus Cops.
We're assuming that like they're just not getting any calls anymore, but he just might have gone, that'll do me.
Yeah, he might have just like retired, or he might be on radio. I think he pops up on radio occasionally.
I think he's mostly in music now, isn't he?
He was charged with some assault, and then they dropped it because there wasn't enough evidence or something, and that's all I've heard of him in recent years. I can't find the stationery. I mean, fucking hell. Like, women love Daniel Craig, so
that's a very sexy line.
He doesn't have to work that hard, but couldn't they do better than that? And instead of taking his coat off, he should have been just dropping his trousers as he walked through.
Right, love.
Right, love.
I mean, she does look great, though, doesn't she? But it's odd how she like turns up dressed as a stripper.
Chris, it's not appropriate for the weather. It's not rain. You should take it off. Well, actually.
I feel a bit sad for Fields. I really do.
Why? Do you think she's a bit wasted?
Well, yeah, obviously, Gemma Arterton, she's a great actress. But I just kind of feel like obviously she's like a very new agent. This is probably one of her first missions, and that's kind of how she ends up. And you just kind of feel.
Well, I think that's the point, though, isn't it? It's meant to be.
I know. Yeah, it's just one of those things you think, oh.
Yeah, through a modern lens, she's a junior agent who's like felt. Well, I suppose I better shag him. He's my superior and stuff.
Senpai noticed me.
This is actually a bit of a fucking Me Too story if you think about it. But the whole point is not to think about it, of course. Right. Just to keep you all informed, listeners, I'm going for a piss. I'll be right back.
Okay.
And to keep you all informed, I've just sneakily been for one already, so there you go.
I'll go next. This is the Do Expect to Talk weeing hour. All this talk of wine,
Yeah, so Bond's charmed the pants of Strawberry Fields. I'm not really convinced that was like particularly good gag to begin with. It's like, it's just Fields, and then you find out in the credits the name Strawberry.
In the credits, the name Strawberry.
But is that really a particularly good gag if you think about it? It's like, I don't know, should we be clever? And it's just, well, I don't know, is it worth it?
Are there any other kind of like Beatles song related, gags running throughout the film? Probably not. It'd be good if it was part of a thread, but I don't know.
Which joke is this?
Oh, the Strawberry Fields.
Strawberry Fields.
I was just saying, like.
Well, it's a joke that's hidden in the credits anyway.
I know, but is it really that funny joke?
Not really, no.
No. For what it is, I know it's just like, well, it doesn't matter, it's in the credits, but it's like, yeah, but what the Beatles got to do with Bond?
It's just the idea of them all sitting around giggling under their breath when they came up with this genius thing. Plus, Gemma Arterton was born when? And when were the Beatles active,
Mm.
Bit unlikely.
Just saying that.
Fields basically could have been Penny Lane, I suppose.
Yeah, that's another one.
Mind you, that's got an Almost Famous vibe to it. You ever seen Almost Famous, folks?
Oh, not in a long time.
No, not in ages.
Wasn't she known as Penny Fields in that?
I'm not sure.
Penny Lane. Pennyfields. Penny Lane.
That's another new character. That's 2 new characters we created.
Yeah, Strawberry Street, you know.
Penny Rigby, yeah.
Penny Rigby. Yeah.
I mean that's the thing.
Fields.
If there was an ingoing gag of like sort of dropping like characters' names as Bond songs in the series, I would get it. But
Yeah, if there'd been kind of like a running joke, but there hasn't. So
Meet my associate, Miss Paperback Writer.
he's my associate, Eleanor Rigby. Oh,
Well, that's a real woman's name. You'd get away
yeah,
with that.
exactly.
Miss.
I don't know. I mean, it's a great name.
Submarine. Yellow.
That's name Yellow.
You could say he's a real nowhere man.
Living in his nowhere van.
And your name? Taxman. What do you do? Collects tax. We haven't thought this through, have we?
What's your name? Maxwell. Oh. Oh dear. But yeah, it's one of those. If it was kind of like a running joke of these sort of things,
Yeah.
then there isn't. So
It's not great, but I mean, it's never bothered me. I just remember looking it up in the credits afterwards when they said, "Oh, you find out her name there." I'm like, "Oh, Strawberry Fields, okay, fair enough." I don't ever remember thinking, "What a shit joke," or thinking, "That's
no,
really good."
oh, pleasant
Or laughing.
surprise.
I literally just looked at it and went, "All right, Strawberry Fields."
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like I'm critiquing for a retrospect, but if you're thinking about actually doing it, you're thinking, is it that good? Do you know what I mean? Because you went there like, oh right, Strawberry Fields, whereas no one thought,
You kind of want an iconic
God,
name. To
I
go
can't
with
believe
an
they put
iconic
Strawberry
character.
Fields. That's great, brilliant. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I kind of feel like you should have the name to match up with the character, though. I mean, if you think of a character like Pussy Galore, for example, there's all kinds of reasons why.
Pussy.
Well, all kinds of reasons why she's iconic. Also being played by the legendary Honor Blackman for sure. But if you've got sort of other amazingly named Bond ladies.
And for long-time listeners, can I just point out that the joke dies with her?
Sorry.
You'll never know now, folks. Yeah.
Yeah, we're never going to make that joke again.
Well,
Anyway,
yeah.
but I just feel like if you got a Bond girl with that name, you should kind of try. This is going to sound really, really harsh, but I think it's a classic name. But it's, we haven't had that kind of running joke as well. But Artiston is an actress. I 100% rate her. Definitely check out her body of work. It's actually a delight to watch. As is Olga Kurylenko, definitely, and I'm all for an advocate of definitely strong Bond girls.
I mean, she's attractive,
women,
but I,
definitely.
funnily enough, on first viewing, I don't know if it's a haircut or what, but I found her like attractive but a bit bland. And over the years that have followed, she's sort of, I don't know, I saw her in Oblivion about 5 years after that, and
She's really good.
Johnny English and a few others.
Yeah, Johnny English, but she was really good.
I just think she definitely looks older. I mean, she definitely would pass as like 40 now, but she just looks, to me, better now. It's funny, I've never seen Berenice Marlowe in anything since Skyfall.
No, I've seen in one of, a handful of films.
Which is a shame because she looked fantastic in that.
She did. And she was great in the scene she had, albeit not very much. She always reminded me of the woman that was in the lead in The Artist as well, physically. But I've not seen any of them in much.
That was a good film.
I liked The Artist. Not everyone did, but I enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, when you think of modern Bond actresses, I mean, she's not technically a Bond girl, Xenia, but I suppose you would say her and Eva have probably had the best careers. Halle Berry, you could count, but she already had a career, didn't she, really?
Yeah.
Bond
she just won the Oscar, didn't she? So
Bond was kind of neutral to her. It didn't make anything any better or worse for her, really. But Eva Green had only been in a couple of things.
I think sometimes, especially if you're a woman, it can change your career in different ways, can't it?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you're just starting out of your career, then you have I don't really know what the term is now, like Bond actress. Obviously can't say Bond girl anymore.
Well, you can, but I mean, I don't hold on to the term like I must keep saying that. It's like I'm quite happy to say Bond actress or whatever.
Bond lady. Lady. Oh dear.
So anyway, which Bond tart do you think's done better?
Dave, it's Bond bitch, please.
Sorry.
That's going in the trailer.
It's such a non-PC. It's such a PC world now. I can't keep up with the appropriate terminology, Chris. So anyway, which Bond whore do you think? Yeah. Bond girls are. The funny thing is, the vast majority of Bond girls in recent years almost defend the term because they feel they're joining the ranks of Bond girls, and it's an historic thing. So, funnily enough, you'll get women in the films who would otherwise have quite feminist views who insist on being known as Bond girls. So,
it just goes to show it's all perspective, isn't it? Really, it's like, well, how do you?
It's a matter of perspective.
Yeah, it's like, well,
I'm not going to tell women when I'm not one that they shouldn't be offended by it. It's like, well, fine, if you don't like the term Bond girl, that's okay, but understand when I use it, I'm using it based on a near 60-year-old series.
Yeah,
and a 60-year-old series that has characterized women by and large much, much stronger than a feminist non-fan would think.
Well, yeah, because
it's tricky, isn't it? It is tricky.
Because
what I'm saying is, if you don't watch Bond very often, or you've seen bits, or you've seen some of the worst examples, and you've just bought into this idea that all the women in the film are disposable and just sex objects and all the rest of it, there'll be some truth in what you're saying, but we can point to several example of very, very strong women in
exactly.
the
I mean, they kind of
very, very
do
early
have to
on.
be saved by Bond. I mean, even
But
like people like
also,
people like Camille or Lynn, for example.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we do have characters like Chrissy Galore who were very progressive, even in Fleming's novel writing at the time in which he was writing, incredibly progressive and scandalous even.
It was, but it's a mixed bag, because after that, Domino's a bit bland, and you know what I mean. And
Stacey.
the Roger Moore era does have several women in it that are just embarrassing.
Yeah, Good Night is probably the worst one, I think. Probably the worst example, I think.
Because he treats her like a slow child. So what I'm saying is the picture is nuanced. I'm not saying there's nothing in any complaints people would make. There's a lot of validity to any complaint people would make about historically Bond girls, but there's also a surprising amount that are way more progressive than you would ever imagine if you've not seen them.
Well, I mean, yeah, because if you go to like most Bond fans and you say the term Bond girl, it's something that is part of the franchise itself, and they don't just think, whoa, bit of that. I mean, they all have their own little sort of. They basically have their own character. They all have their own part of the series.
I mean, it's a different word with a different meaning, but it's the same as saying henchman in Bond terms. That it comes with a certain connotation of what you mean. Yeah,
exactly.
So when you say henchman, you mean, well, not the villain, but he's normally got a guy who works with him who's a bit more physical. Yeah. And sometimes that's a woman like Xenia or whatever. Yeah. But that's what we mean.
Yeah, because Bond girl is essentially...
characters like Fiona Volpe, for example.
I mentioned Xenia. Xenia's not a Bond girl. And it isn't because she isn't like a sexy woman and all the rest of it. It's because she doesn't fill that role in a Bond film.
She's a henchman. Though you could make the argument she is a Bond girl, because,
Yeah, I think what could say.
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to rank Bond girls under whatever criteria you were going to do that, I wouldn't argue if Xenia was on the list. But if you were to say there's one Bond girl in each film, and possibly a secondary one as well, Natalia is the Bond girl in GoldenEye.
Yeah. It's the basically Bond girl basically means the female lead of that film.
Inclination with Bond.
It does. Sorry, what did you say, Becca?
I was going to say, but then I think by that token, you would say that Xenia is as well, just because she may not be as you say, the primary, and because she's a villainous character.
Yes, but if you had to fit, I wouldn't argue too hard with that. But if you had to fit people into their little boxes, their little roles, she is the film's henchman.
Sure, no, of course, definitely.
In fact, she's one of two, because Oromov technically is as well.
Is it Bond girl? No.
Yeah. What a lovely pair of tits he had.
Looked great in bikini.
Like here, for example, obviously I would say like Gemma Arterton's also a Bond girl, and so is Camille as well, even though she's the primary.
Gemma Arterton's the secondary Bond girl, though, the sacrificial lamb. She's like Aki.
Yeah, you've kind of got the both points of the compass there.
Yeah, that's another one.
She's like Aki or like Pat Fearing or something. Yeah. They don't always die, by the way. Yeah.
It's never heard of again.
They're just never heard of again, and they're not the main female lead of the film. So yeah, Pat Fearing would fall into that. Andrea Anders would.
There's always Bond allies, and there's usually sacrificial lamb as well, as you said, because
I kind of think like with the term Bond girl, for example, I just think for me it's just kind of it's a blanket. Just if you're a female in a Bond film, you're a Bond girl. Not necessarily a Bond girl, but you're a Bond actress, Bond woman, whatever the term is these days. So. That's just how I approach it.
I've got mixed feelings on it, only because part of me goes to defend it because it's an historical term.
Well,
It doesn't have the connotations you could be hanging on it, and it's a term that's almost meaningless to us now in terms of breaking down the constituent parts of the phrase. It is just literally a role within a film, but at the same time, values and standards do change over time. You know, there was a period, go back a few centuries, like slavery was legal and acceptable. So things do change over time, and it may well be that Bond girl becomes a term you can't use at the moment.
This is probably, I would like to sort of direct listeners towards the work of Dr. Lisa Fennell, definitely a work on femininity in Bond films and the role of the Bond girl.
She's a huge Bond fan.
Yeah, definitely. She has a real passion for the films and for the books as well.
It is not
really interesting reading. Highly recommend it.
It's not incompatible with feminism, though, is what we're saying. And Lisa's proof of that. I
exactly.
follow her on social media. Although her favourite films aren't the same as my favourite films, but there you go. We have very different tastes. But no, I like Lisa. I follow Lisa. I've interacted with her a few times on Twitter. She's a nice lady, and she's got thoughtful ideas on stuff. She also appeared on the latest James Bond and Friends, doing a sort of watch along with Die Another Day.
The comments are really interesting, definitely.
You know.
But yeah, so if any of us haven't checked out her work, then I highly recommend it for sure.
I don't think she'd fit on this show somewhat because we're way too flippant and thick. But
she'd raise our intellect tenfold.
If you want like a bit of intellect in
I don't know, it'd be good to have her on though, I reckon.
Yeah.
Learn a thing or no, not learn a thing or two, but you know, I don't mean that in a bad way. But
hello, love.
We'd have to be let her know it's a comedy podcast.
To be honest, we're not really that type of show anyway. But like Lisa's really great, and but there you go. I don't like the effect that's coming here. That plane at that shot looks very CG, and when they dive out,
this plane shot, it does look very fake in general.
Did they film it in like the Vomit Comet or something?
It does look a little bit like that.
They filmed them in like 0G or somehow. I don't know if it was on some sort of turbine wind effect or something, but they filmed this and then stuck it against green screen, and I don't think it looks very good.
That's probably one of the few moments in the film
that attempt to make it more visceral than say Moonraker. But Moonraker was a better effect.
It does. This scene does this sequence is a bit like out of place, though, isn't it?
I was getting sick of the film by now because we're an hour and 10 minutes in, and it felt like it was just going from one point this action sequence to the other, and I couldn't see the point of the whole aeroplane fucking thing at all anyway, until I read that like Mark Forster wanted to use all the four elements and stuff like that. I just thought this film needs to slow down and actually have people talk to each other. We talk about Bond films being too long now. This film, I believe, to be too short. It's not that you can't do. Yeah, I think it's too short, Becca. I think if you gave it a bit of breathing space between scenes, it would all flow much better.
Sure.
That's not to say you can't do an hour and 46-minute Bond film. I just don't think this is the one. You know, this cut of a Bond film is too short. Although, having said that, I think almost from a prestige perspective, I don't want to wait 5 years for a Bond film that's 100 minutes. I think they need to be over 2 hours, but I think for all the flaws of the Roger Moore era, I think his films averaged out at about the right length. They were all about sort of 205, 210, something like that. It's about right. That's what I think a Bond film should be. You can add 5 to 10 minutes onto that now for credits. So I think if a Bond film comes out at like 215, 220, that's probably about right these days. But then we can't comment on the length of No Time to Die till we see it, can we?
Well, no. I mean, how long is that now? Is it like 2.5 hours to 2 hours 40?
2:43, Becca?
I think so.
163 minutes, isn't it? That's what I'm reading.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, it's a long one.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Dark Knight Rises, it's that sort of length.
Yeah, it's kind of getting more and more into the epic category.
Let's see what they do with it. I mean, I'm not against it in theory.
Like when we get to kind of like the 3+ hour mark, it's just like
As a general trend, I think they've been a little bit baggy.
But bear in mind, this is probably Craig's last one, so there's probably a lot of stuff they've probably got to do, haven't they?
Yeah, I think if it was a debut film for somebody, I'd be a little bit like, why? But you know, I'm not going to prejudge it before I see it. Honestly, I'm not. I can talk in generalities about film lengths, and I think they're getting a bit more indulgent over time. But this film is an hour shorter, and it's too short. And it wastes time on things like this. She's talking about her backstory, and I think in review, Becca connected with this a little bit. Correct me if I'm wrong, Becca. I don't think you dislike this stuff, but I just thought it was a waste of running time.
This one is it's a difficult scene, really. This one is needed for like important character pieces because we do learn a lot more about Camille, about her, her background and her links with Medrano, and why she's so scared, and why she's so keen to kind of leave her mark, as well as making his, for example. Did drag it a little bit, but I just think it's an important character beat, really.
Okay.
We haven't really had time. We haven't really had time to spend much with her and learn about why she's out for revenge and what her mission is, and to learn that she is just as driven as Bond. And we were talking about strong female characters, and I think she's probably one of the rare moments where we do have somebody who is because she's an agent herself, on an equal footing, at least with Bond. But yeah, it's an important character moment, I think.
I can see what they were trying to do. Bear in mind, in screen time, in movie time, this is days after Vesper died. So the idea that he'd be, getting any kind of romantic emotional attachment to her, however fleeting that often is in Bond, maybe wouldn't fit. But then he might drunkenly just like shag the Office Junior. So that kind of fits with Bond as I would understand him. I think he would have some casual encounters because that's what even the literary version does quite a lot of. The idea that there's nothing romantic with Camille is understandable, but then in Bond lore it means she stands out a bit in a good and bad way. Firstly, they've put a bit of effort into her characterization, but there is a part of me wondering why she's there in the first place. I mean, is it literally like Robin to Batman that you need to give someone for the lead to talk to? I.e., he would be wandering around literally talking to nobody right now if she wasn't.
Yeah. It will be. It will be always one of those things you have to like that back and forth. It's typical. You have to have a Bond girl in some way, form. And as you say, one of the things this film does right is to not have her as a as a reward for the end of the film. It wouldn't feel right anyway. It's coming straight out of Casino. But,
absolutely.
But it's like you don't have to always end with like, oh, James.
No, because I mean,
No.
I would understand any sort of feminist issues with that because it is the woman being presented as like the prize, the reward, the well done, shoot your beans up her muff. In the words of The Office, beans and muff. So I you've got to walk a very careful line with this. That the females in these films still have to sort of adhere to what we'd understand from the Bond series in some respect, but you can't just have her there as someone to shag at the end and that's it. And they've largely done that right in the Craig series, the Craig run. Even where the chemistry wasn't quite there, like in Spectre, what they were trying to do with the Madeline character is good.
Yeah. Because even here, she's like, she has her own thing, she has her own objective.
Yeah, she's got her own agenda, isn't she?
The problem is it's a bit cake and eat it in that, like, I like the idea she's got her own agenda, but then when she puts it forth in the film, I find it a waste of screen time and wish it wasn't there. So in some respects, the film probably couldn't have made me happy there.
It's a little bit like Few Eyes Only, though, in the sense
it's
that
not Mark Lamar again. I love that. He follows it to the letter by immediately going up to his suite. Doesn't say where to run to. You'd think.
No, just run.
A bit more detail. It's like Inspector, where he's got the video of Judi Dench, but it doesn't say anything really. It's like, come on.
He just inferred all of it.
Come on, give some more detail than that.
Oh.
I have a love-hate relationship to nods back to earlier points in the series. This is one that's right on the line to me because she's in the Goldfinger pose.
Oh.
And I'm a little bit like,
really?
Okay, what are you trying to achieve with that? But at the same time, it's much better than 20th watch, 20th!
Yeah, literally.
Let's roll out the Aston Martin.
Yeah, here it goes.
Yeah.
with the 60 machine guns attached to it, which he didn't get from me.
No, if you've got a near 60-year history, I'd imagine there's always going to be some sort of degree of what George Lucas would call rhyming. But it is that in love with itself.
I didn't quite like that.
A few times.
That phrase does annoy me a little bit.
Echo might be a better word.
Yeah.
I get what he's trying to say. But the difference is Star Wars is a sort of linear saga. It might have been told non-linear in some ways, but this really isn't. It's kind of different installments. Yeah, the Craig era has been, but there's no reason you have to have a Pierce Brosnan film constantly referencing like a Sean Connery film, for example. I don't understand that, and it will eat itself eventually because it's not creating new things to call back to. It's just calling back all the time. But yeah, that is basically...
It's a difficult scene.
Well, it's the fact that she was drowned in it while she was still alive. It's in her lungs.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Here, though, I mean...
the most gruesome deaths, definitely.
In the middle of this fight, you forget how many people he got in the lift with. I mean, it's so like...
Yeah. Hold on a minute.
It's like, hang on a minute, how many were there? It's... Oh, hang on.
It's a small lift.
I know, but...
just taking time with certain beats would probably, like, elevate this to 2 hours. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't have
a couple of seconds, like Winter Soldier style, for them all to like look at each other in the lift would have helped. Because I can't tell you how many people are lying there now.
Yeah, again.
And it's like, follow him, he's onto something. And it's like 2 minutes ago you were take him in, send him back to London. If you thought he was onto something, why bring him in? And having said to everyone, follow him, he's onto something, we never see any evidence he's followed it again. It is that bit where they're just making it up as they go along. They wanted a scene with M out in the field. They're very fond of it in this era. They need her eyes on Bond in person. But it's one of those where it falls apart when you think about it. He's my agent and I trust him. 2 seconds ago, I was sending him home in disgrace.
Well, he just needs, just needs to look into, Daniel Craig's blue eyes and go, oh, go on then. Yeah, I came out quite pleasantly surprised with, I can't pronounce her name, I always monster it.
Olga Kurylenko?
Yeah, oh yeah. Because the only thing I've seen her in prior to watching this film was that first Hitman film, which was rubbish. So I was thinking,
which I don't think I've seen. Is that the Timothy Oliphant one?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
And yeah, you think, oh, really? They've gone down that route? You think, oh, okay. And she turned out actually pretty well, considering.
Yeah, and I quite liked her in Oblivion, which was quite a criminally over.
Yeah, that's quite a good film.
I mean, it's a prestige film in that it's Tom Cruise and all the rest of it, but it's not one of those films that really grabbed public consciousness or did massive money. All his films do all right, but I really quite liked it. Although I liked what's she called in it more? The other one.
Oh, is it Andrea Roxburgh?
Yeah, she was in an episode of Doc Martin yesterday when I was not caning them, honestly. As a young school age teen, Cornish girl, whatever. And I looked her up and she was about 24 at that point. I thought, I'm sure that's her. Got a bit of a thing for her, to be fair. No, but then when I saw her as a schoolgirl, I'm like, no, that's not right.
She's the type of actress that does disappear.
She's another
into
one
roles.
But she can do a bit of everything because she's attractive, so you can put her in those sorts of roles. But she can play a bit unhinged. She can play humorous. She can play a bit cheeky. She's really very talented.
She can play tough.
Yes. But yeah, so I like that film a lot. Oblivion.
My Blu-ray's skipping, so excuse
me.
We are with dodgy noises.
Dominic Greene's going to suck this place dry, apparently. I'm hoping.
Really?
I'm hoping they mean the water and not he's going to keep the bar patrons very happy.
He's going to go...
That's
turn up with this big hose.
That's why he's popular.
Hey, girls, look at my big hose. Even here, he meets, Felix, and it's immediately racing off into another sequence. It's like, let them have a conversation.
It's literally action after action after action.
Would this scene, just hypothetically, would this scene work a lot more, or a bit stronger. Had we not seen, this was like maybe it's the first time we see Felix. He just showed up to help Bond, like he's like gone out his way to kind of like give it. Hey mate, heads up. I'll give you a bit of plot.
I can see what the film is trying to do because he is party to what's going on in the CIA and collusion with Greene, which I don't think they really know is criminal, but they sort of don't care either. The idea that he's got out to slip a message, and it doesn't end with him being a sacrificial lamb. It actually ends with him being promoted and no one need ever know. I like, but it's all so ham-fisted in the telling. And they rush scenes. So instead of sitting and thinking about, actually, that's quite brave of Felix because he's seen what's going on, and I bet his boss is outside. Because they're straight onto something else and him running away, your mind doesn't have time to relax and think about it.
Yeah.
So instead of thinking about Felix's role in this, we're straight onto this. And when I saw this little thing here, I thought, Christ, that's pretentious. That shot doesn't belong in a Bond film.
Which shot, sorry?
The shot of the salamander or whatever it was.
Right.
That's a bit strange. I think that's just a kind of a marker to say, oh, look, we're in the desert.
Yeah.
A hotel in the middle of the desert.
Which actually does exist and is a hotel, but it's used for... Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, if you like, in that I've always found it one of the most ridiculous parts of the film, but it's actually true. That's a hotel largely used by construction workers in the area, apparently.
Yeah, you can go and stay there, but it's mainly for construction workers.
Yeah, but in the telling in the film, it's just like... It's like that joke in Carry On Up the Khyber or whatever it is, where they keep having like... Or is it Follow That Camel? One of them, where they have like a load of mirages, and then they eventually walk past this lovely hotel and ignore it because they think it's a mirage. And the guy's like, I told you not to build this here. It's a little bit like that. Why would you build this here?
I've never actually seen that. I need to get on it.
None of the Carry On films are brilliant, to be fair.
No, I've been.
That is a joke.
I had Carry On Camping, I think, on ITV, one of the ITV channels, I think, over the Easter break, which I totally missed. But I kind of feel bad having been to Pinewood and not ever seen a Carry On film.
Wasn't there a cab driver one where, like, you know, all the female staff sort of like went off and did their own rival business?
Probably.
What I find sad about the Carry On films is it had to coincide with like one of the best eras of American cinema ever. So when like early young Al Pacino and Robert De Niro and like Scorsese was making all these amazing gritty films, we had that in the Confessions films.
Sex comedies were thriving.
And Robin Asquith did like one of my tweets the other day when I described Bottle Boys as ahead of its time, but you had to get the context of the whole conversation.
Well, I never knew that. Wow.
Hey, I tell you what, there's a small chance Captain Tom Moore will pass 23 million while we're online.
Hopefully, yeah.
He's at nearly 22.9 now as we speak.
That's incredible. Yeah, I think he'll become Sir. Sir Captain.
For anyone listening not in this country, which is a lot of you, go and look up Captain Tom Moore. Walk for the NHS. This guy turns 100 in about a month, or the end of the month, I think it is.
Yeah, end of April, isn't it?
And he started off trying to raise a bit of money for the National Health Service here during the current crisis, hoping he could raise like £1,000, and he's currently raised nearly 23 million at the time of recording, just from walking laps of his back garden, lengths of his. Well, I don't think it's his back garden.
4,576%.
Yeah. He's bought each length is like 25 meters or something, and he's doing like 100 of those. But he's nearly 100 with a walker. That would be very hard work for him. But he was a captain in World War II, so he's got dressed up, very smart with all his medals to do it every day. And he completed his 100 laps, a couple of lengths. I keep saying laps. It's not an around thing. It's lengths. It's straight up and back. I think it's a home. I think he's living in a home rather than his home. Looking at it. And he expect then eventually when he realised it was making a lot of money, he thought, well, maybe I can get 500,000 then, and 23 million, fantastic.
Oh, it's like a refreshing pint of beer. That
good.
What was
that a refreshing pint of beer that's been brought to the table?
It does look refreshing, doesn't it? Especially in
Oh,
those dry
right.
conditions.
I thought you meant my little story there was like a very refreshing pint of beer. And I
Well,
was
that
thinking,
too.
Dave,
how?
you are always like a refreshing pint of beer.
How is that anything like a beer?
Well,
I thought, Chris,
it's
you might
nice
have
and
been drinking one.
frothy,
I was like, oh.
goes down well.
Well, I do go to. Oh, hang on. Funny, just as Dominic Greene saying you'll wake up with your balls in your mouth.
That's like a refreshing pint of beer.
Yeah.
Oh.
She hasn't quite had the career I thought she would have, but that's not unusual for the Bond series, really. I say Eva Green's had probably the best career of like modern Bond girls, last 15 years. But Eva Green is such an unusual look and so on.
She always looks like a Rachel Rise, though. I always sort of think they look similar.
Who?
Eva Green looks similar to Rachel, Craig's Mrs. Rachel Rise.
Maybe a little, I suppose. I don't think they're that. They're of a similar type.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. The important thing is we've all seen both of their tits. One of them a lot more than the other. Yeah. I'm just pleased for Daniel Craig. He's sort of become a father again fairly late in life, and he does seem, I saw him like doing that applaud for the NHS the other day. Whatever you think about that, he did that with Rachel on like the balcony of, I think it is, of wherever their place was, or something like that, and he looks genuinely contented, and I just like that. I'm quite soft on just people being happy. I like to see it. He's got quite a good life the other day, and these days, and he's got like another franchise ready to go as well when he ends this one.
Yeah, what franchise is that?
Knives Out.
Oh yeah, potentially, yeah.
There's no reason they can't do like another sort of Poirot style tale with that character every 3 years or so.
Yeah, I'd love for that to be a series. That'd be amazing.
And it's not age dependent. He could still be doing it.
Excuse me, sorry.
And because he's like he's not even a policeman, so it's not even like there's any kind of retirement age. He can he could still be doing that character.
He could play Monsieur Blanc for a long time.
He could play it in his early 70s if he wants. That's assuming these films continue to be good and liked, and there's lots of if, buts, and maybes with it. But certainly the first one has been successful and lauded enough to get a second.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine he's going to drop the ball so badly you won't get like 3 of them, and then who knows after that.
Well, it goes to show the sort of enduring popularity of the genre, really, isn't it? I mean,
well, it's
I think
shocking
you can assemble
now
a
how
cast
little we've had of it big screen.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
we've had a lot of detective shows on TV, and Poirot has been on TV and stuff like that in fairly recent years. But when you think about it, we haven't had a lot of this, murder at a stately house kind of shows in quite a long time, have we?
No, there's more, as you would say, on the stage. You would see it on the stage or on the small screen. So it's one of those really tried and tested popular formulas, and obviously you've got the creative team behind it. Always going to attract an amazing cast like that. So yeah, long may it continue, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it a great deal. It wasn't reinventing the wheel, although there were little things in the narrative structure that were different.
It certainly kept you guessing. I mean, it's one of those things where
it was a lot of fun. What I loved about it was it kept you guessing without really. You knew that could not be the end of the story. When after 20 minutes, you know who killed him, and it was still technically correct what they said. You knew that couldn't be the end of the story, and I like the Blanc character, and I just like those sort of prestige casts where they're not all A-listers, but they're all names.
Yeah, they're big names.
They did that in the 70s. Go and look up the Poirot films for the 70s. You just
especially things like Lord and the Orient Express and Death on the Nile, for example.
Yeah. No,
they're probably the two.
I think I'm thinking of those really.
We got literally like Sean Connery, Tony Perkins. Gielgud, for example.
I think Audrey Hepburn.
Audrey Hepburn, exactly.
Yeah, and that's what they'll look for again. They'll do similar. They'll go and get like. We can't even guess who it's going to be because it depends what characters he wants. So we couldn't guess, but You know, name any reasonably big actor of the last 40 years, and there's a possibility they turn up in something like that. There's nothing to say that like that the victim next time might not be like Dustin Hoffman or something like that. You know, and all of those sorts of people could be in it. You just don't know. Bill Murray might turn up in one.
Yeah.
You just don't know. Anybody who's a name, and they've got a calling card now because the first one was popular, so they know they're going to be in something that's likely to be a hit.
Yes, it's a good one to have on
and
the
he did say having Daniel Craig on board made the conversation so much easier with everybody.
Definitely. Yeah, they've gone with like a lesser actor, then it would not have been as easy.
Because especially, I imagine it, filming wouldn't necessarily take that long to do anyway. So it could be like, yeah, sure, why not? I can.
I mean, I don't know
like
how
fun.
long Knives Out took, but if someone told you that was a 28-day shoot, you'd believe them because it's all fairly contained in location, isn't it?
Yeah. Because especially if you're playing like the main murder victim, you think, well, I'm not gonna have that many scenes, so.
Yeah.
So you could,
That's the thing,
as a big name thing, you could be like, well, yeah,
spreading
sure.
the load. The thing is, as well, you'll be able to film different things on different days. There will be shots where you need to be all in the same room, but when you think about those shots where they were all in a chair talking to like the cops, they could have done that on. They might have done all of those on different days. I doubt it. They might have done. It's possible. So yeah, I'd love to see more of it. I think. Well, I mean, we've talked about it, so we won't do it again. But there's no doubt I enjoyed the films more than say you did, Chris. But I would like to watch more of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair,
Then we could add that to our roster. Go and do the Poirot movie.
I mean, to be fair, it's more
I'd
a case.
happily do anything like that.
In more of a case, it just didn't speak to me more than anything. It just was like, okay, I don't.
Oh, you never said a negative thing about it. And
No.
in fact, when you said about flaws with it, you phrased them as questions.
Yeah.
We talked about it on, I think, the summer review or something like that. I can't remember when it was now. No, it wasn't summer review. It was the winter special. When we talked on there, you didn't go, I didn't like it because of this. You said, well, I felt this. What did you think? And I was like, I think the answer to that is this. And some of your complaints I could clear up and some I couldn't. So, no, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I did always say, like, it's probably sort of in for a rewatch anyway, even walking out of it.
Yeah.
So I wasn't like absolute with my opinion, but
yeah, no, I know. So yeah, this is the last thing. You just throw some oil at him, like very small thing of oil. I mean, if you actually needed oil in the middle of the desert for your car, that wouldn't get you very far.
So if you follow the North Star and
until you can't put anymore, you'll be the one who sits above MI6, and then when they get there, it's like. Well, this year it would be Gordon Brown sat on a gold throne in the middle. Yeah. There's some lovely shots in it, though. I mean, the editing's awful, but the shot making's lovely. Lovely shots, just haphazardly put together. I was disappointed when I saw initial shots from this, like teaser posters and stuff. And I read that the initial idea, which Mark Forster changed so it was before he came on board, was to film everything that you see that's like desert in this was meant to be snow. And I was disappointed, and it's because I associate snow with the Bond series, and this Bond hadn't been in snow, obviously, yet. And actually, over time, I think it's turned out to be the right choice. It's got a very distinctive look to it, Quantum of Solace, as a result. And the tan in the colours really pulls out his blue eyes, don't they? Fucking look at those eyes.
Yeah, they really stand out, and they're quite piercing.
She could have given him a quick hand job here, couldn't she? Do you think you'll be able to sleep now? Well,
no, you will.
Well, you could help.
I kind of feel bad that they don't end up together. And it's like, but both of them were very much their own people. And...
I've always liked the tease, the fact that might come back as a character at some point. Not necessarily as a romantic element, but just as like as someone who could like a lighter who just pops up.
Perhaps next time he has to work in South America. Well, you did.
It'd be what happened now, but
no, it won't, will it?
No, it's a shame. I mean, I know years ago they were talking about a Jinx spin-off. I think Camilla's another character who if they were going to choose it, a spin-off.
In a way, it's like
I think it'd be cool.
It's like Rhythm Section, isn't it? That's pretty much what her character would be.
Like, that's true, actually. Yeah.
It'd be like Rhythm Section, really, wouldn't it? What her character would be.
Yeah,
So
The
breaking up a little bit on my
rhythm
end. Sorry.
section was a wasted opportunity, wasn't it?
Mm.
I didn't think it was a horrifically bad film, and
Might be better as a TV series.
fans of TV's Castle will recognise this lady. I never watched it.
I haven't seen that series in ages. Oh my
She
gosh.
was female lead of it.
She
all.
was.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Ooh. Dear, it's quite terrifying.
I love his clothing in this, though. I just wish they
Scary.
kept on with that. Even the sort of cut of the shirts and ties, just better.
Reminds me a little of Timothy Dalton.
I do think. Well, I think from an aesthetic point of view, I think one of the problems with how he's dressed is like they also dress like some of the henchmen in the same sort of way. So they both kind of look similar. I think you sort of said that in the opening chase, but I've noticed it as like an ongoing thing. Like so, whenever like he's fighting someone else who are suited up, they look similar.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I shagged her, by the way.
Look at you.
Just, he's not even. He's had Eva Green and he's not even boasting.
Well, he gets to go home to Rachel Weisz, and so.
Not at this point. He wasn't with her at this point.
I think it was Dreamhouse, wasn't it, when they got together? Was it?
I can't remember, but I think it's about 8 or 9 years ago. I think he was with her by the time of Skyfall. And yeah, they've got a kid who's about 2 now, something like that. Time of recording, something like that. They live in New York, but then of course, her first partner, the child, her first child's father is American, so I suppose it works for everybody doing it that way.
Well, it's just kind of the nature of their job, isn't it? So.
I like that he doesn't waste a lot of dialogue, but I kind of wish he'd said there'd been a bit more here. This is very
a bit perfunctory, isn't it?
It's a bit. I don't know what they. Yeah, I never left is a nice line.
No. Yeah, that's great.
And the fact he hasn't killed that guy is the whole point of this film. Anybody who turns around and says Craig kills too much in it, and it's like, well,
hold on a minute.
I think it's bad, but hang on a minute. That's like that's the point of the fucking film. So his arc is now complete. So we can have the gun barrel back at the start of the next one.
If only.
No,
they didn't find the right shot.
I think the next one they should just discuss whether MI6 has any place in the modern world. I need you back. I never left. I like that. The only thing is he drops the thing here, which is the Algerian love knot, which is a good idea. But there's something about it. I don't know if it's the same one they used in Casino Royale because it looks cheaper in this film.
I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's a different angle.
Could be. It just looked a better piece of jewellery. So a nice reflective bit of quiet that won't be at all ruined by the
by epic gun barrel at the end.
Yeah, fucking hell. And now he's going to sprint across the scene like he's late to work.
We need a wee.
He looks good in that gun barrel. If it was slower, it would be his definitive gun barrel. Because in the next one, he's got a crew cut, I don't know if he lost weight or bulk or what after this film because he's bigger in that gun barrel than the 2 he did after. I don't know. I just love watching the behind the scenes stuff on this and Elvis, the actor playing Elvis.
Yeah, it's interesting.
He was interviewed and he was going, and Elvis has a secret. And I was thinking, can't wait to see what that is.
Where's the wig?
What, that fucking mop on your head isn't real. What a shock.
And he really likes opera because he while watching that opera thing, he kind of he's really into it, and he looks at one of the other henchmen, and he just sort of gives him a little bit of a look, and then goes back to the opera as if to say, "Oh,
I'm really enjoying this."
All right, at least Elvis is happy. All the viewers desperately wanted to know that. Christ, I don't know. It's a difficult film to generalise on because they were very hamstrung. And if it had been any other studio or most other studios, you'd say delay it. Well, A, they'd only delayed it once, and B, MGM were about to go into bankruptcy. They were desperate for the money.
Well, they were. I think that's what, obviously, it was so rushed, wasn't it? They just had to, right, okay, we'll get this out. and talk about what we can.
The problem is they're then hamstrung by the fact that you have to talk up a film. If you're in it, you can't go,
Well, it's shit.
exactly. And Craig at the premiere was saying things like, we knew we had to work really hard to match Casino, and I think we have. And it's like, you haven't. It always comes out years later. It's like Brosnan would die. Tomorrow Never Dies. I mean, whatever your views on Tomorrow Never Dies,
they did their best at the time with the the tools at their disposal.
But they go around. It must be soul destroying going around the world promoting a film you think's bollocks.
Well, it was difficult circumstances.
There's a strange noise in the background. What is that?
Oh, sorry, it didn't have some work done.
All right, whatever. So yeah, a lot of people worked on this for it to come out so disappointing. I was disappointed when I saw the running time of it, though. It just, for years, it felt like almost half a Bond film to me. It was just this little coda at the end of the last one and rushed and
a bit more for your money.
Yeah,
But I don't mind it running under 2 hours though. I don't mind like a Bond film doing that. But at the same time, I would like to up the pace of them a little bit. It's like make them a bit more regular. But I think we all agree on that.
But it's not all bad. I mean, I think a lot of people have never deviated from their initial. I mean, there are going to be people out there who don't like it, who rank it low. It's one of those films that if you stick at the bottom, I get it. I'm not going to argue you're totally wrong, although I don't agree. But I think a lot of people they've stuck to their initial impression and have never really challenged that impression. When you don't know what's going on in this film and you're trying to watch it on the big screen, it can be quite a miserable experience. But as it settles, it's not all bad. It really isn't.
It's more of a shame, really, because you think, the wasted opportunity that the franchise could have ultimately gone. Yeah. And also, just in terms of, like, I say, like, the editing and, like, of how it plays.
It's done dating the film no favours either.
The actually ideas and some of the shots, the texture, the look of the feel are all really nice. You just think, it could have been so much better. It could have been like a really, really decent follow-up. That could have
they thought about their locations and their sets and their look, and I don't like all of their choices, but even choosing Sienna for what is a perfunctory scene with some MI6 people out in the field, you could have just gone to a fucking car park somewhere and just dropped him off it. You know what I mean? They thought about going to Sienna and stuff like that, and there were lots of things in this film that I really liked, but there's no doubt it was badly hurt by what happened. James Bond will return, but it will take a while. And that's Quantum of Solace, folks. All done. The second of the Sony deal, so not involved anymore. Leo saying goodbye to everybody, and that's that.
That's that.
It's magic words. James Bond will return,
and it's going to be Universal next time, isn't it?
Universal worldwide, Annapurna in America.
And what in America?
Annapurna.
Oh.
It's Universal around the rest of the world, though. So we'll see how that comes out. I mean, the film is the film. That really is marketing campaign they're involved with. And I said Eon have done a good job. Actually, I think on the face of it, Universal were doing quite a good job with No Time to Die in terms of promotion.
Do you see it sticking with Universal?
I think it'll be an open bidding competition next time. I think the issue they're gonna have is if they open in November and we are still, even if we're not locked down, we're still in a lockdown mentality.
Yeah.
And people who are going to go to the cinema because they like James Bond, but maybe don't go to the cinema that often, they think, I can wait. I'll see it at home. If this film doesn't do massive money, there might be a tendency for Eon to turn around and say, well, it didn't really work out with Universal, did it?
Mm-hmm.
It is not beyond the realms of possibility it comes out and does like 500 million. And I would never, ever have said that pre this virus. I would have thought 800 million would have been the absolute floor for it.
It'll be interesting to see if they do stream it or do, rent for £20 or whatever, rather than wait to release it in the cinemas in November.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know what we're going to be like by that point. I mean, by November, I think we'll have already started.
There'll still be no vaccine. There'll still be.
No.
It's still very unlikely. So there'll still be some degree of social distancing and care and washing your hands and you should wash your hands anyway, folks. But I just mean,
Yeah.
I just mean that sort of government guidance of every time you go out, don't forget to do this.
They
Don't
still
do that.
people are quite cautious. I mean, you only got to look at the situation in China. You know, things are starting to relax, but people are, you know, you can go out to dine, restaurants are open, people don't. Well, you know, they're still very, very cautious.
I might be wrong.
Yeah, they still go to the seaside though, quite happily.
Well, yeah, so they're going out to the seaside areas.
There's something about outdoors, you know, that people just don't see it as dangerous. Whether they're right or wrong is a different matter. You might be right. I mean, this may have no effect, and Bond comes out and does 1.3 million. But I just think November we are still until this vaccine comes out. I think we're still in territory where we can't really guess, if we're honest.
No,
we could have
call it.
We could have done box office predictions a few months ago based on this film, and we would probably have been wrong, and we'd have been wildly divergent between us, but there would have been a logic to what we were saying. So I would have argued an amount, and I would have told you why, and you might not agree with it, but it would make some kind of sense.
Yeah.
I think now I'd feel very, very uncomfortable guessing, wouldn't you?
It's all out the window, I think. I mean, everything's kind of taken a major hit. Like every aspect of life has taken a hit, and it's just you can't really call it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
like, we're looking at, like, sort of new release dates, and they're all kind of, like, late start, late end summer now. And I think by that point, I think we would start to reopen things, but it will be, like, a slow, gradual thing, even by choice, even by public choice, I think.
There's several aspects to it, though, isn't there? Because there's not only when do they reopen, and how does the virus respond to that?
Exactly, and how do we manage that as well?
If they open in July, let's say, or August, I think end of August is probably a better guess, judging by the rest.
Yeah, and the end of the summer season.
So let's say at the end of the summer, they open cinemas again, and cinemas do a few low risk, low impact dry runs. They show a few older films and series, and you know, maybe you can go and watch, I don't know, the Star Wars sequel trilogy or something like that. By November, people might have got used to doing it again. And yes, there's a bit of distancing and washing your hands and all the rest of it, but they can get around it with scheduling and stuff like that, and maybe. But if they open it in August and it continues to, you know, we get a bit of a second spike, or no one really decides to go back to the cinema except the real hardcore, then by November we may not be close enough to something that looks like normal. But it's a guess. I mean, anything we say, it will be a total guess. We cannot possibly know.
I can't call it.
Never been in this situation, but I know after World War II there were, and that wasn't even a viral thing. People were a bit nervous to sort of go out for a while because they'd had years of being frightened of being bombed if they went anywhere. So I don't know. You might have to write this year off. I really don't know.
No, we could take a leaf out of, because was it South Korea? They had MERS. Which is kind of like sort of, well, it's
deadlier. It didn't spread as much, but the death rate was really high.
5-6 years ago. Yeah,
something like that.
And obviously they had not that we've less resources, but they seem to have dealt with it a lot better than obviously they got that experience to build on.
I think, I mean, and a lot of it does depend on the vaccine, because there's a team at Oxford that think they'll have it ready by September, and if they have it ready, they're suggesting that they're going to start their mass market run so it can be out there by Christmas. Now, what the government and the World Health Organization are saying is that any individual vaccine project you back has historically a low chance of success.
Well, it's only in quantity, isn't it?
So we have to back loads of different horses. And on the normal run of things, we would think 12 to 18 months. That said, if this Oxford one is successful, there could be a vaccine knocking around early next year. You just don't.
We don't know.
I fucking hope so, because this is like a nightmare. I'm not able to see anybody.
No, this is horrendous.
Yeah. But there you go. We'll just have to see. I think anything released this year is a risk. I think anything released pre-vaccine is a risk. Unless they literally find a drug that they know just sorts it. You know what I mean? If they suddenly find a certain drug that's been in wide use works on it, or they find some path to treating it that's a bit better, then I don't know.
Yeah, something that's a bit more effective that'll tide you over to a proper vaccine or something like that.
Yeah, where people go, I know at the first sign of symptoms I take this and it manages the worst of it, unless I'm in this at risk. But I mean, I think what we probably ought to say, for all the flippancy of this podcast, and we would prefer you to be smiling, listening, than taking anything too seriously. But I think we would all acknowledge none of this fucking matters, really, in terms of like films and stuff like that. They do matter because people's jobs are dependent on the film industry. But as much as we complain about delays on Bond and stuff like that, if it's next year, it's next year. It's not the most important thing at the moment.
Yeah, because by and large, well, everything has shifted, isn't it? So everything's kind of like been cut.
Yeah, everything's kind of shifted up.
Now,
they should never have taken this long, but now they've taken this long. If it ends up being 18 months later than they expected, that is not their fault.
No.
And if it ends up being 6 years, the film is in the can. It's not going anywhere.
And they were, one of the first to kind of make that decision as well. Eon kind of made that decision to pull and then move back to November, and then a lot of other studios kind of followed suit or have gone down the VOD, the streaming route.
I'd love to see the sort of timeline on that decision, just because Chris just asked, or one of you just asked, I think it was Chris, about Universal. And I do wonder if there was a bit of influence from Universal being risk averse because they've only got one shot at it.
Oh, that's true.
If you've got a one film contract and you're looking at a situation that might hurt your box office, you will be very, very.
You'd be extremely, yeah, you would.
I mean, I naturally thought it might be Eon, just because, with no offence meant to either of them, they are older than the average sort of studio execs and might just be a little.
And it's for them, it's a family business as well, isn't it? I mean, like
they do care.
But...
Yeah, I think that I must say that for every criticism I've ever had of them, there aren't two people you could.
Sorry,
find...
excuse the noise going on in the background.
You couldn't find two people that care more, could you, Becca, than Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli? Nobody cares more about the franchise than those two. So yeah.
Well, no, not really, because it's like a family thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Becca would have answered that, but she's just gone to deal with the noise.
Sorry about that. Yeah, but, doing some work going on in the background. So.
And I was just saying, no one cares more than the Bond producers about the Bond franchise, whatever I might have to say about some of the decisions they've made.
Yeah, definitely, you can tell. I would say because it is a family concern for them.
Honouring legacy, protecting their investment, protecting their company, protecting their employees. So yeah.
Exactly.
If it's next year, it's next year. I mean, I'm not. I tend to think we'll be back in cinemas before the end of the year, but
who knows at this stage? Who knows?
We don't know for certain, and even if we are, you got to think business is going to be hit if we have nothing more than what we have now. You know, if all we've got is we're not sure how to treat this except ventilators if it's really bad, and there's no vaccine for it, then who's going to really want to sit watching movies in November?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
we're making our own.
I'm starting to wonder if I've got to think if Bond opens in November, I'll go. But there's still that hint of doubt of what's going on in the world at that point.
Well, if it's there, if it's showing, if there's like cinemas are open and they're showing it, I will be there, no doubt. But it's like whether are they only selling like certain amount of tickets? It could work. It end up working like that when it slowly start gradually. I mean, obviously they'd probably sell the tickets, but they'd have to like only spread them out to a certain degree. So it's like they won't be a full house by any stretch of the mark, but they make sure that you won't be sat next to anyone, or unless you're like it's like your partner or whoever a family member who you're living with. I suppose I don't know, but.
We've had sorry to interrupt, but we've had an update on Nick. Just in the last hour. Becca's commented on it, so she's obviously seen it.
I've just seen. Yeah, it sounds positive.
He's got COVID-19. They're not clearing the pneumonia, but he's conscious and grumpy and sick of being in hospital. So that's all a good sign.
Yeah.
What the one worrying thing in the post is they're saying they can't understand how they got it, as they've been self-isolating for weeks.
Yeah.
So trusting that they've done everything right, and because
there was an update from Shelley about there's some youths smoking out the front of where they live, so it could have been carried up. I don't know.
I mean, assuming it just shows how easy it is. I mean, even if they've done absolutely everything right, you can pick it up as whatever.
It's hard because we don't know, do we?
No, you don't know. And both
aside
of them
from
with everything that they got going on, they're going to be like the most careful people ever.
I know, and they're not going to let him out until that pneumonia's cleared. So if he's conscious with it and upbeat, then all it means is he's going to be stuck in there a bit longer, and we can hope for the best.
You'll get through this. It'll
Good
be
luck,
fine.
Nick. Good luck.
Good luck. Lots of love
Good
to
luck.
you. You can do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I remain positive.
Okay.
Yeah.
As for social media, you can find us at you can find us. No, you can't. You can find me at the Past Kid 1976 on
It's a
Twitter.
Fast Kid podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can also tweet me at Cinetronics.co.uk. Oh, sorry, just Cinetronics on Twitter. You can also find all the old episodes at Cinetronics.co.uk, which is available on. Oh, that's Becca's line, isn't it? Go on, Becca.
That's me. I think with this lockdown, we've all gone a little bit loopy and forgotten what to do.
I know.
And it's quite funny because the film club that I belong to, obviously, our season is on hiatus now until we reckon September time, but we're not quite sure. And we would usually do like film of the year, for example. And yeah, one of our members suggested that to us. So you can still do it. I'm like, how do I do that email now? What do I do? What's my job? But anyway, yeah, so you can find us on Twitter at Expected to Talk. You can drop us an email, expectedtalk@gmail.com. You can find us all the usual places: Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Facebook, all the places you would usually find your podcasts. You can see us there.
Great. Moving on to a new series, which means Becca.
Dun, dun, dun. Do you expect us to talk will return with Fast and Furious?